Incoming transmission from the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps! Incoming transmission from the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps!
Hey, this is Raleigh Beckett. I'm here to let you know that you're listening to the greatest mecha podcast in all of the internet. Make sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends, because only then can we fight the Kaiju together. Welcome to Big Mecha, but not huge. Is that it? Can I get paid now? Alright, what a shit show! Well. Who do we have here today on this brand new episode of Big Mecha, but not huge? Who all do we have today?
Hey, it's David. Yeah, I went with my legitimate name last time, right? I didn't
did.
make an alias. Okay.
Yeah, and we originally were going to go with the alias for Will, but then I'm like, you know what, fuck it. Let's just say Will, as long as I don't say any other names.
The only other alias I've had isn't an alias you would want to use repeatedly, and a shorthand version makes no sense. So I'm just like, fuck it, just whatever. It's my name now.
And who else do I have with me today?
Hello, it is Will.
Oh, hello, Will. Long time no chat.
It has been months, this is true.
Bullshit. We were just on Discord PlayStation chat last night, so get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I don't believe that you two don't talk to each other.
You know what? For the longest time, we actually really didn't, but I think with doing the podcast, it's helping us reinvigorate things again.
Gotcha.
True, really brings the spark back.
I know, right?
Boys and their hobbies.
Yeah, what do
Yeah.
they do in that shed all day? I don't know, but they always come out sweaty. So tired.
Hey, it's only because I'm fat, alright?
And he looks so happy. He doesn't look like that with me.
Man, I
So,
feel bad for
gentlemen,
people in the subway.
today is a special episode, not because we're just going to be talking about special things, although, to be fair, this was a really special treat for me. On my birthday this month, I decided to go ahead and watch a very particular movie called Pacific Rim. I love this movie. I adore this movie. I have watched it multiple times. Definitely did in theaters multiple times. But because of that, I was like, you know what? Let's go ahead and put Metabots on hold just for a little bit. I want to talk about Pacific Rim. So, Will, I know that you watched it recently. How many times have you seen Pacific Rim?
Total?
Yeah, if you can, ballpark it.
At least 4, probably 5 or more.
Good man. Now, David, how many times have you seen it?
Ah, yes, the red-headed stepchild bastard that is me.
I'm assuming that
One
answer
time-
is never. Ooh, you watched it.
One time, and it was about 12 hours ago. More than 14.
Oh,
Yeah.
at least it's fresh.
So, since you are basically, you popped your Pacific Rim cherry, so to speak.
Hey.
It's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, damn right.
Let's go.
Before we go into any specifics, give me a general review. What did you think?
So, I think right off the bat, I have to wonder if the directors of this did not desperately want to make this a serialized TV show.
No,
The-
actually.
the-
Sorry.
They didn't?
No.
The beginning? Okay, because the beginning felt like they were... the beginning... I know I said Gundam last time I was on here. The beginning feels like a very old school mecha. Like, it has a really slow startup there. Everyone's doing the high five. I know that's like a movie cliche thing, but a part of me was like how many wide shots they got, how much like emphasis on the Jaegers in the beginning, and how much like bromancy it was. Because normally whenever you see like Western media, they usually focus a bit more on like the guys than they are the equipment, or the crew than the equipment. Like I think of like Star Trek with the reboot for that, for instance. But like this felt very much like, no, this is about the mecha in Pacific Rim.
Like they put
really
a lot of backstory and background to it, yeah.
So
Yeah, there's like a lot of build up with the kaiju and like why and like and how long they're here. Like there's a lot of like little mechanics around the kaiju and the mecha where I felt like this feels more like this felt like wanted to be like a serialization in a way. You know what I mean? That's the vibe I got from the beginning. I love the movie overall. Like there's only one kind of a lull, but for the most part, like it had my attention the entire time, which is pretty hard because sometimes these movies don't do it for me.
No, I get it completely. I watched a horror movie earlier today, and it's supposed to be one of like the most disturbing movies ever. It was
Long Legs.
which one?
Long Legs.
No, although I did watch that a couple weeks ago, and honestly, not a fan. Um, but the one I watched today was a 2022 Dutch film called Speak No Evil. It's getting a remake that comes out in a couple months, and it had moments, but honestly, it was just very slow. And it's like, what is it with horror movies where they just want to make it super slow, and then oh no, it's the build up. Like, I get that you want build up, but if you're having really slow pacing issues, then why am I here? But
There's a difference
regardless,
between slow-paced and well
I'm
done
glad to hear
and
that
just
you
kind
actually
of
love
boring.
that movie. Before we go into my obvious review on it, Will, what are your general thoughts on this movie?
Um, well, to touch on what he was asking, because I mean, I really like giant robots, giant monsters, fun stuff like that. Um, it wasn't supposed to be serialized. Guillermo del Toro was the driving creative force behind the entire film. He was the one pushing for it. He was the one trying to make it. It was his thing. They purposely he did not do what a lot of movies will do, which is where when you're trying to get a feel or you're trying to get a certain emotion or a style, you'll have your crew and yourself review other films or other scenes and be like, so obviously we are doing a fight scene. Actually, to talk about Tom Cruise for a second, there was a fight scene in one of his movies, and he showed his stunt team scenes from a musical because in that musical, the way that it's choreographed and it lines up is what he wants for the scene. He wants that type of feeling, that type of flow. And so he showed them that, and he's like, we're going to take this, and I want that to translate to what we do as this action scene. It's a very common thing, very common technique, and it makes a lot of sense. Del Toro purposely went the other way. He said, we're going to make our own thing, we're going to do our own stuff, but I don't want this to be like some giant fan service nod. I want it to be its own thing. And when they were done making it, people would watch it and point out scenes and go, "Oh, that reminds me of this scene from this show I watched," or "Oh, that reminds me of this scene from this movie." Even the music is reminiscent of giant monster movies soundtracks, and all of that was just
Damn
because
right
they
it
took the
is.
same approach to making it that the people who made those original things took. And that was what he wanted. He wanted it to feel original and rooted in now in how it's put together and all that stuff and the writing and everything, but he wanted to take the creative approach of I'm not just copying something that already exists. I want this to stand on its own and be its own world, which is probably why it feels that way because he puts so much effort into having it be its own thing. It turns out it did super well, and then he did not come back for, as far as I'm aware, literally anything. He only made the one movie, and everything else for this franchise has purely been done by other people. The comic books, the TV show, the second film,
Yeah.
all of that was done by other people, done by the studio, and Del Toro's basically had zero involvement after that because that's all he wanted to do. He made his movie, and he's like, "That's
Well,
it.
he
That's my
was
movie.
originally
That's
going
what
to
I
do the
wanted to make."
sequel.
He said he had
Well,
ideas
he
for
was
it, but there
originally
was
going to do the
nothing
sequel. If you
concrete.
remembered, he had it. Yeah, it was supposed to be called Godzilla. Godzilla. Wow. Back that up.
Wow.
It was originally going to be called Pacific Rim Maelstrom, which would have been an interesting thing. I honestly want to know what he had originally planned, but I'm still happy with what we got. I mean, I know a lot of people aren't, but I am really happy with what we got for the sequel. Um,
So the only thing that
all
I
right.
knew about, all right. So I think for me it's kind of funny because like when I went to watch the movie I didn't see who directed it. I just watch now, click now, go right. So it's kind of funny that like afterwards I saw Guillermo's name
Mhm.
attached to it, and I'm like, man, I remember Sean loving Guillermo del Toro because I then also remember a very old conversation you and I had in which you were like seeing headlines online or like you were like vaguely talking to me about it, and I remember you being like, "Oh man," and you're like, "What?" I was like, "What? Guillermo del Toro isn't doing the next Pacific Rim movie. They just got some guy." I'm all like, I remember you just being mad about
Yeah,
it.
I was pretty upset at first. I mean, because when you have somebody who has his vision and you don't want it to be compromised by the studio, which is very very common,
Oh,
unfortunately.
100%.
Um, you you just want to see him actually do his own thing, but since I think his reasoning was actually just because it was scheduling, because they were having such a hard time trying to get the second movie moving forward that once they finally decided to greenlight it, he wasn't able to participate.
Well, remember when I said he didn't plan on it? He didn't. He was like, I'm going to make my movie and then that's it. If it does well, we talk more later. But with how projects work up and down and all that stuff, they did that. And then it did well, and he's like, okay, well, but I didn't plan for it. So I'm now attached to like, 4 other things, and I've got all this stuff going on. I don't have the time to do this now. And then it just turns into a nightmare. I mean, the only person who came back was Mako. That was it. Literally the entire.
No, Charlie Day, sir.
Oh,
Charlie Day,
and the guy who played.
and
The guy who
Gottlieb.
played. The guy who played the Ranger, the dad. He came back too, I think. Right? No, they had a
No.
completely different person play that type of character.
It's because he did.
What?
He's
Son,
dead.
the father's
The
alive
son
at the
died,
end
not
of the
the
movie.
father.
What the hell are you talking about, Sean? How many times have you watched this?
Wait, which Ranger are you
The
talking about?
father, the one with the dog, who is alive at the end of the movie, spends the entire.
Oh, he didn't come back into the second
Oh,
one.
Yeah, he
okay.
broke-
Yeah, his character got taken over by a.
I thought you were talking about Idris Elba. Spoilers.
No, not him either. He did not come back for number 2. Missed opportunity.
Now if he did come back,
That'd be
be really
fantastic. I
impressive.
was
Not
disappointed
gonna
of the level of force
Which is-
ghosts in the second
lie. I'm
film.
like,
Man.
is that in your account, by the way? Maybe I'll watch Pacific Rim 2.
It
just to be
is.
like, what the
It
hell?
honestly is.
Force Ghost.
I bought every.
Okay.
Well, the only thing that I haven't been able to buy is the anime yet, but that's because
doesn't exist.
Netflix hasn't released it.
Not real. I'm waiting for them to delist it and take it away from the internet.
Well, once they delist it, it's a possibility that it might actually get released retail. I mean,
Apparently, that's the order they're going.
But yeah, I mean, look at what's that one that I love, Devilman Crybaby.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's finally getting a release.
Yeah,
That's timely release right there. 7 years or something.
absolutely. But we're not here to talk about Netflix. We're here to talk about Pacific Rim. Thank you very much. And with Pacific Rim, I have seen this movie, as I mentioned before, multiple times. I absolutely, as I mentioned also before, adore this movie. This movie is fan-fucking-tastic. It is a movie where it's giant robots versus giant Godzilla-like creatures known as Kaiju. And it is bombastic. It is cheesy as fuck.
Yeah.
It has moments where you're like, okay, this is getting really serious. Oh shit, that was really dumb. But this is amazing. Every fucking moment throughout that movie is great. I only have one issue, and that issue is that they randomly insert other people, and I wouldn't even say that they're as cameos. They probably had like a couple lines, and then it's like, why are you focusing on them? And then they're gone. You don't even know who they are. They're just there. So that's my only thing. Other than that, movie's fantastic.
I could see that.
So, to add to that, while it is really tropey in certain aspects, I think the one that picked up me the most is the training show-off montage with the sticks. That might be the one. That one is like dripping with tropiness.
Yeah.
Then next is the machismo fight. Apologize to her.
Which has so many
But
cuts
this
when
movie
you
does-
watch it. It's so funny.
Oh my god! By the way, you know my annoyance with this. Will, you're gonna learn this about me. I hate with a fucking burning passion Michael. Some of the Transformer parts in those first 3, where they refuse to zoom out so you
Yeah.
can see the fighting. So Pacific Rim, it's weird how the fighting with the Jaegers.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Zoomed out, I can see
So
everything.
pretty.
And whenever they do a zoom in, it is perfectly zoomed in. And then you have the people fight, and we're getting close to the kind of air camera work that I hate. I'm like, oh, come on, guys. How do you nail it with the mecha,
So
but then mess it up
it's
with the only 2
because
human
when you
fights?
deal with people, you have a physical camera that actually exists in reality and physics exists. But when you have the Jaeger fight, it's literally perfect and the camera has no weight, so you can just do whatever you want.
Yeah, but teach Michael Bay to do that.
I
But
mean,
anyways.
there's no excuse for Mr. Bay not understanding that. So if I scroll back on the mouse wheel, we'll see more of the shot. And he's like, what do you mean more? And they're like, so the camera doesn't exist. It's not real? No, neither are the robots there. If you zoom out, you can see more of the not real robots with the not real camera.
Absolutely.
I remember, so one last thing is that I absolutely love and hate at the same time the violence of it happens in the very beginning of the movie too, in which there's no blood, but you know in your soul it's the worst way to go. The main character's brother getting ripped out and just beating it off into the ocean. Oh, it is the worst thing.
The only thing worse than
Lord.
that was
I can't.
attached to him, and then later in the movie he's like, "We were drifted. I felt," and then he lists off his pain, his fear, and his helplessness, which are the three things that would flash through your brain immediately in that situation. And he's like, "I felt all those," and then dead silence, and I'm like, "That sounds traumatic."
Oh.
Someone needed therapy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And what did he do? He ran away.
His therapy
that's his
was
trauma
construction
response.
work, and I don't really see a problem with that. It worked for Frank Castle.
Okay.
Here's the thing, though, right? Here's the thing that actually bothers me. That the guy gives him shit, right? The young guy who's a part of the Mark V Jaeger. He's so cool.
Designed by you,
Yugo.
the guy who does Metal
Yes,
Gear
it was.
designs. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, that's a
I know,
weird.
that's cool.
Yeah, I thought I would bring
That's
that
a weird
shit up.
piece of trivia.
More Koji. Okay, it's funny you bring that up because a part of me is like, I love how there's these creative director guys who get absolutely ruined by the movie industry with the conflict schedule with the movie industry. Is like, oh no, yeah, we changed our minds. Come on this day, and you're like, I can't do that day. Well get fucked, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
in Guillermo, right? I love how when I thought that, the first person I thought of was Kojima. But I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to lean into Metal Gear, and then here you are, like, by the way,
100%. Striker
another
Eureka was
Metal Gear
designed by
reference.
the mech designer of the Metal Gear franchise. 100%.
Yep.
100%. He also
I love the
designed.
mechs in-
Now that you've
I
seen the
love
movie,
mechs in Metal
look up
Gear.
his posters. He drew all of the Jaegers as movie posters for the release of the film for like promo art,
Yes,
and they
he
all
did.
look really cool.
I'll make sure to grab those for the video
100%.
version.
They are gorgeous. It's super neat.
But I absolutely love this movie, and I'm glad to hear that we are getting the same thing from both of you as well. So what I would like to do...
Oh,
what?
holy shit! I'm sorry. No, I just saw them. Oh, they're
Right?
amazing.
You are welcome.
They
Yep.
have no business going this hard.
That's
Considering
it.
the fact that two of them get taken out within
Yeah, they do.
5 minutes, but
So-
all of them go hard.
Although
as
to be
fuck.
fair, when they get taken out, they do get taken out in epic fashion.
They do make their deaths look really cool. They do the power scaling, because that's really all it is, very well. Where they sell that like, no, these are really good, but they also sell right before that. But the entire program is on its last legs. Everybody's like scraping around for resources. They're running out of everything, and they're like, so we're basically out. We're gassing out. We're running out, and it's like, okay, so them losing while looking really kind of dumb. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that's dumb. We'll get to it, but it makes it works.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found myself thinking like halfway through was how the movie it sells very well how serious it takes itself. Nobody winks and nods at the camera. Nobody says anything offhandedly. There's no dumb comment. Nobody, lampshades like that. Although there was a
Nobody looks at
Nope.
the camera and then does like a
none
little
of
wink.
that. Everyone is going to treat it dead serious, but it'll work because everyone's being genuine and their performances do sell that.
Mhm. So speaking of performances,
I agree.
I wanted to go ahead and introduce the actual movie itself by reading off the beginning of the Wikipedia thing, and then I figure we can go ahead and go through the plot bit by bit based off our memory, and then we can chime in as to our thoughts on that particular moment, or if we think that it was really cool or it was really fucking dumb, that kind of shit.
No, I
All right,
refuse.
sounds like a plan.
Motherfucker. All right.
I'm the agreeable
Right?
one.
Although, to be fair, you did just pop your Pacific Rim cherry, or if we want to call it a rim shot. But anyways.
How long have you been waiting for that? You write that like a week ago?
I wanted to. Actually, you know what? I have to give him credit for it because he actually didn't even know I watched
didn't.
Pacific Rim.
Ooh.
Yesterday, yeah, he was surprised to see me here today because I told him yesterday I watched Deadpool 2 yesterday. I haven't watched the whole movie from start to finish. I've only ever seen it in bits and pieces. And then he's like, yeah, no, log into my account, whatever. So I did that, and then I just like, you know what? He did mention he's watching Pacific Rim tomorrow with the podcast, and I do kind of feel like an asshole for missing out on the last Metabots one. Okay, that was it. That was the motivation.
That's a
I didn't even tell
pretty,
him.
pretty quick motivator. I like that. So,
Yeah.
Pacific Rim is a 2013 American science fiction monster film. Damn right it is.
Almost 10,
Directed
over
by
10
Guillermo
years.
del
Hot
Toro. Right? Directed by Guillermo del Toro, starring Charlie Hunnam, who you may also know from Sons of Anarchy. Idris Elba from just about anything that you want where it has a really cool black guy in it who goes like, "We will cancel the apocalypse."
There's a guy with anger issues on a detective serial show.
That's true. I don't remember the name of it, but I'll look it up later. Rinko Kikuchi. The only other movie that I know she was in was actually directed by the Zellner brothers, who were originally from Rooster Teeth, and then they split off and did their own thing. She's in a movie called Kimiko, where it's basically her searching for the hidden treasure from the movie Fargo. And it's supposedly based off of a story, like a true story off of that.
Like the Wisconsin movie. Fargo.
Yeah, like that one.
What the?
Yeah.
The one with the witch.
Yes, that one. Right?
Is the treasure what landed in the wood chipper?
No, like it was buried treasure that
what are we
Stephen
doing here?
Buscemi ended up burying, if I remember right. I could be wrong, but it's been a while since I watched that movie.
I watched it once ages ago. I might be a different person.
Maybe. Got Charlie Day. Obviously, we know what he's from. He's Charlie, and It's Always Sunny. Robert Kaczynski. I have never seen this guy before, but he played the young ranger in this one, who was pretty much an asshole the entire way through, but he played it well.
He did. He was very annoying.
Yes, he was. Max Martin, who plays his father.
I've seen him and stuff.
Also, don't know what he's in, but apparently it says on here that he was in Saving Private Ryan. So, figure who out that is. I don't care. And then, obviously, Ron fucking Perlman.
Didn't know he was in it the first time I watched.
Do I really need to list what he's in?
He just came out of nowhere. When he turned around, I was like, "That's a genuine reveal. I like that."
Right? It's not like what they did with Godzilla, where they did that long pan-in shot of the army captain inside the submarine, and as soon as they like twirl the camera around, it's some dude that I've never seen before. Like, why would you do that?
That was funny.
It was weird.
I'm pretty sure he's an actor with some level of "you're supposed to know this," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm just not a big enough fan." I guess.
Probably.
The thing I like about the Ron Perlman thing is the perfect use of Ron Perlman. He shows up, he is quick and in a hurry, he doesn't overstay his welcome, he does his gimmick twice with a knife, and he
Did
moves
you watch
on.
all the way to the end?
There isn't.
So you
Yes,
saw
I
the
did.
post-credit scene too.
Yeah, that's the second time with the knife.
Ooh.
Where is my goddamn shoe?
I will say that speaking of really great use of a person playing a character, and then also Idris Elba, y'all remember that other Suicide Squad movie?
The Suicide Squad?
That's the second
Yes.
one? Whatever. The one that has Idris
Yes.
Elba in it. That one, that is the way that my wife and I would describe, back when we watched it, that's how we described their use of Harley Quinn. She's there, she's her character, but they didn't let her take over the movie and run it, and they're like, no, she's going to be there, she's going to show up a couple times, it'll be really fun, and then it'll go back to a story about not her, because it's a story about not her. And it was. And the entire film is just, essentially, she's there as a cameo, and then she's gone. Which actually made it a lot more fun.
She has her little stint with the army, with the general dude, or the whatever his name is, Generalissimo.
Which was nice, and it was a great little scene. And then she's gone, disappears for a little bit, and it comes back, and that was a good use of her. And I will agree, that's how they used Mr. Perlman in this film.
Yes, they did. And the last thing I wanted to go ahead and was talk about the writer. The writer is not only Guillermo del Toro, but also Travis Beacham. He's done Pacific Rim, Dog Days of Summer, Clash of the Titans, and the Amazon Prime TV show that is no longer on, called Carnival Row. So, just some things that I wanted to make sure to highlight before we actually get into the plot here. So, do you guys just want to jump into the plot, or do you want to do like an actual intro to the plot? Because some of the things that I've seen on other podcasts is like they could plot, everybody, shit like that, but we don't have to.
I think we can just, we can go back and forth between them. I will say, picking back off of my opinions on the movie from the beginning, is it does feel like Hence why I said it felt like it was supposed to be a serialization because the world. But then at the same time, I kind of like it in a really weird way where it's like this world has
Mm-hmm.
clearly already been moving forward. The main character has been a part of it for a while. You're just seeing a snippet of his life right here because things are about to get bad and it's going to go to worse. So this is the only parts that matter. Because like clearly they frame it like Gypsy Danger was like what can I say, like already famous beforehand, almost like a boxer, right? He had fans, all that stuff. Like, the nice little world building. We don't get to see that because that part doesn't matter. So in the beginning, I'm just like, I would like to have seen that, but then again, there's so much going on in the movie. It was like, yeah, there was no time to see that, even if you wanted to
Right.
entertain it.
Absolutely.
You know?
Although I think that's where the comics come in. The comics actually tell a story before all that, so you might actually get that through the comics.
I also love the
Oh,
jackets.
yeah, the bomber
Those are so
Oh, the
jackets.
bomber
stupid. I love
jackets?
that
Yeah.
both brothers had the jackets. Yeah,
It's pop culture
that's
as
so
hell.
dumb. I love
Alright.
Oh,
it.
fucking pop culture.
And now here's a word from our sponsor.
Hi, my name's Rolly Beckett. You may remember me from such films as Pacific Rim. And that's it. Today, I'd like to bring you something that's a bit of a passion project from the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps that'll help reinvigorate this Jaeger team. I bring you Jaeger-infused Siegfried Zambonis.
Yay!
Jaeger-infused Siegfried Zambonis, or Jizz for short, are a brand new type of Zamboni that are infused with Jaeger tech, patented by Werner Siegfried. Say hello, Mr. Siegfried. I am Werner Siegfried, the creator of Jizz Technologies. I'm happy to partner up with the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps for this randy venture. Indeed. Act now, and we'll send in a free multi-operational personnel planning executive resource, or MOPPA for short. So if you are in need of some grade A ice resurfacing, Jaeger style, be sure to order this brand new Jizz with its free MOPPA. Be sure to go to packrimjizzmopper.com. Remember, only you can cancel the apocalypse with a nice icy shine with Jizz.
Yay!
So, beginning of the movie, it starts off with telling us what kaiju and what Jaegers are, how the kaiju actually show up. They're part of this interdimensional portal that they managed to find in the Pacific Ocean called the Breach. And these kaiju, they wreck shit. I'm talking going from city to city, making sure that everything is fucked up. And all the armies of the world can't really take them down. They've tried like multiple times, and they've only taken down like what, maybe 2, 3, and then all of a sudden they come in like, oh, we're big and strong, fuck you. So that's when they decided to go ahead and make the world a better place by everybody uniting against the giant evil, and they made Jaegers. Will, what exactly are Jaegers?
They are Big Mecha, but not huge.
Damn fucking right.
Yeah, they're not huge.
Yeah,
they're
they are.
gigantic.
Okay, so I guess we'll talk. So their size is a thing that does need to be at some point mentioned. They do, and I appreciate it. They do the Godzilla. You're gonna be in water only as deep as the plot needs it to be, because this is a story about you fighting that giant thing over there, and if you were completely underwater, it just wouldn't be as much fun. So we're gonna have you in like knee-deep water, and you're gonna like swing at each other. Don't
Okay.
That
But you
doesn't
say
make
that
any
they go into
sense
the water
because
at
this
the very
is an
beginning.
entire bay that theoretically massive ships go through all the time. I'll let you in on a little secret. If the bay was 40 feet deep at most, I feel like a tanker ship would have run aground by now. But we're just gonna say that it's at most 40 feet, like a quarter mile from shore. That feels a bit shallow,
you
but
say
nah.
that, but then at the very
Also,
beginning,
they were in the
when-
middle
when
of the ocean at
Gypsy
one
Danger
point,
shows
7
up-
miles from shore, and they were still only like 40 feet deep. And I'm like, guys, 7 miles from the coastline, it's deeper than that. That's not how that works.
Well, yeah, but like I was saying, like you say that at the very beginning when Gypsy Danger shows up to help the boat that's off,
Pops up
the,
out of nowhere.
doing its own fishing thing. It just like suddenly pops up after it was already dropped off. You can see it walking into the ocean, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, we're here. I'm like, okay,
So goofy. I love it.
Yeah.
It's goofy as shit,
But-
though.
oh yeah,
I will say, yeah, the water is
100%.
effectively magic in this thing. In this, because the beginning and the other fight is like, you have kaiju that pop out of. I guess I'm skipping to the end a little bit, but like you have kaiju that pop out of the water. They're like almost they have like basically a head and a half on the Jaegers, but yet they swim through the water and the Jaegers can't see them in the bay. Really, they see the lights because the whole
Yeah,
bioluminescence thing,
but they're
like how you
so
can in the
big.
beginning of it. But in the beginning, it makes more sense because they're coming
Yep.
out from the ocean towards the bay, right? So that's a bit more believable. But these things are coming into the bay from the ocean, and so it's in reverse this time a bit more because they're in a more defensive position. But yet they still like underneath them, and yet the Jaegers can't really interact with them until they come up out of the water. And when they do, they're on top of them. It's just like, yeah, the water is effectively magic.
It really
in
is.
this movie.
But at that point, you're going to be like, you know what? It is still giant robots versus giant monsters. They're going to take as much science fiction as you can get. Science in general, who the fuck cares?
Oh yeah. We'll also talk when we get closer to some of the fights. I have opinions. So.
Okay. So, with Jaegers, what's the thing that they do in order to actually pilot them? Do you remember, David?
They require two people to help them run one person's left hemisphere, one person's right hemisphere, and they must sync up in unison. And there is one thing that they don't really describe super well, and maybe you guys might know because maybe it's in the comics. Are there different variations of syncing up with a partner? Because the main character emphasizes like a different kind of syncing with the whole.
Drift
I forget the word he used,
compatible.
like drive something. I forget what it was.
Yeah, drift compatible.
Drift compatible. So it isn't just you can't just have a normal partner. It's like he really emphasizes drift compatibility, and everyone else kind of does, but like it feels like he does more than other people. Are there different types of syncing up with a partner in this universe? They just don't show it in the movies because they have more important shit to do.
In this one, they actually specifically mentioned that you need to have more of like a familial connection or a physical, physical resemblance. That's why at the very beginning, when you see them talking in the backstory about everything, how most of the
They show
people
literal
that were
twins.
drift compatible are, yeah, exactly, like twins. But I think it also has to go with a mental state as well, where if you are people who process trauma in a certain way, and then you can possibly connect with somebody on an empathetic level, then there's a possibility that you should be able to go ahead and, drift that way. Second movie, however, they throw all
That's
that
gone
out.
completely. It's more like just RC fun car. But the way that they make it look
Yeah.
in this one, because I've seen it so many times, the way that I would describe it is when you're around someone for a very long time, a la family, you wind up forming a connection to that person that is, or multiple people, that is way, way closer and more intimate than with most other humans, especially with how our society has always emphasized things like family, spending time with people you care about. And we're also social creatures. That's just how that works. They generally had sibling pairings for those because they would sync up really, really well. Now we all know when we become adults, or even when we're growing up as kids, there are people you just kind of mesh with, and you can't even always intimate why. You just do. And those are the people who you would see, in my opinion, if this stuff was real, that's the people who you would be compatible with. They refer to the syncing as the drift because when they turn it on, it essentially pulls you a little bit out of your own brain, and then it uses your memories to try and line the two of you up, which is why they show the flashes, because it randomly accesses your life, your memories in your own head, and then it uses them to kind of form a link between you and this other person who isn't you. Drift compatibility is difficult, and generally speaking, the only two ways they show in the movie are, well, the three ways are just a person you happen to be really compatible with for whatever reason. One of them is shared trauma. Someone you grew up with, so you spent a really long time around this person, so you are very, very compatible with them. Or you do what they did at one point in the movie where a character just says, it's really easy. I understand you at a base level. And then also, by the way, I know this other character who's very similar to you and I get along with them. So that's kind of how that's going to work. And then the other half is I'm going to bring 0 into the drift because the risk with the drift is because it drags you through your memories, there's a chance that you can get lost in them because it accesses the memory with such an intensity that it feels like you're there again. And your brain, it's like dreaming. You don't realize that you're dreaming. You don't realize this isn't real. Your brain, as far as it's
I'm
concerned,
gonna
is
put
right
you
there.
on pause there because that's actually gonna say something for the plot
Yeah.
later.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, true.
So,
yeah.
with that being said, now we have the backstory for all that. We've got the two brothers here. We've got Raleigh and his brother. I believe his brother was Yancey.
Fish food. It's fish food now because goddamn.
Oh my god! So they go up against the first kaiju, at least from their point of view, called Knifehead, which is this giant fucking beast, like all reptilian in nature, but it's got a giant knife for a head.
The first kaiju in the
It's
film
so
had an
brutal.
axe for a head.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. So they go up against this as they're trying to save this fishing boat, and Knifehead's like, you know what? I'm sick of your shit. I mean, they don't talk. Unfortunately, they don't talk. But it goes like, I'm sick of your shit, and it just totally destroys Gypsy Danger left and right. Like, well, first I think it's the left-hand side.
Left side, yeah.
And rips out Raleigh's brother Yancey, and Yancey's like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, blah, blah, blah," and then all of a sudden just gets ripped out, and you could see everything. Like when Darth Vader yells no, I don't feel shit. When he goes no in this, no, I felt that. It was fucking surreal and awful. Oh my god. And then Raleigh washes up ashore with the rest of Gypsy Danger, and some guy who's out treasure hunting with his kid manages to pick him up, and yeah, that's the end of Pacific Rim.
Very short movie.
Yeah.
I know, right? Yeah, no, just wrap it up here.
So that initial fight scene, honestly, with it showing the stakes between everything, because they originally said, oh yeah, we became our own heroes, and then everything else was just so... It got to the point where we were rock stars, and they were rock stars. You could actually see like the kill count on Gypsy Danger as it's being unloaded, and then they just get fucking wrecked. It's like, oh my god, no, this is some real shit right here.
Yep. It's a war, and the stakes kept getting raised by the enemy, and the problem was they knew very, very little about the enemy. Spent almost the entire movie ignorant of who or what they're fighting or why. They have no idea. All they know is giant monster shows up and tries to eat everything. That's it.
Actually, if you want to take their own movie's narrative into account, they spent 7 years not knowing. Actually,
Yep.
It's a crazy amount of time. How long they've been fighting, and the intensity increasing of the amount of fighting, and they just don't understand. It takes one man to go absolutely insane to figure it out.
Yep. And we'll definitely talk about that.
That's a future thing for later.
So 5 years go by, and originally this movie started out in 2013, showing that everything about the breach and all the background shit. 2020 is when that first Gypsy Danger fight that we see, and then it goes 5 years after that. So now we're in the year 2025.
Oh, next year.
Right? So this is going to be interesting to see how they play that off for the anniversary. And Kaiju are still attacking everything, but what does the world government decide to do?
We're about to get political.
Not in my
folks.
video game.
First time ever in this podcast. They decided to build a wall.
What they really did was they shrank like the cowards that they are, and they're like, if we put the poor people on the edges, their bodies will stop the giant monsters. And then we'll tell the poor people that the giant wall will protect them, when we all know that shit's not going to happen.
And
if we line them, if we line their supple bodies up against the wall, it'll soften the blow.
Human shield
for the
human
hammerhead
shield.
to just cleave through it. I think it'll actually slow the cleaving. Actually, if you just put like get
if
like
it worked
stucco
for Zap
with Velcro,
Brannigan,
maybe I don't know. I
it
think.
definitely will work for them.
Stop dying, you cowards!
Wave after wave of your own men until they reach their preset kill limit. Done.
Yeah.
I really don't honestly know. I would love to know, because So yeah, we can make a bunch of jokes because it's quite rife for that. Just absolutely, totally made for it. It really doesn't make any sense because the people in charge had to know that the wall was a terrible idea, and they also had to know that moving inland was pointless because if I if I drive 2 miles away from someone and they're still chasing me, nothing has changed and I'm still being chased. I'm just 2 miles in another direction. So they had to know logically the wall was pointless. They had to know that canceling the Jaeger program was dumb because those are the only things that have proven effective. So I don't understand why, and they never give us an explanation. I don't understand why the whole
No, they
government
don't.
was like, you know what?
See,
We're going to cancel the only
so
effective weapon we've had, which is the exact opposite of what every person in the military has ever done, make a less effective weapon.
so two things. So two things, right? You're actually leading into one of the reasons why I said it felt like a movie got turned into, that was going to be serialization, because that is a perfect starting point of like your allies being your enemies in the background, almost very Star Trek-esque, like the Minion War, where Starfleet actually fought Starfleet kind of for a few episodes, where
I
stuff like
could
that,
see that.
you know, very much
I
like
could
hey
see that, like an internecine
huh
political conflict causing a bunch of issues.
yeah, but but
Nope.
in this movie
No, we
there
just
is
skip right
no
over.
time for that. You know what I mean? So so they introduced a plot line that would have been a thing like a few episodes. There's episode there's thing to resolve in any other show, but they introduced it in the movie, which I'm assuming they're just taking tropes because they want to accelerate the plot to
Mm-hmm.
big robot
robot
fighting
go
time.
boom.
But but I feel like they didn't have to do that. But like once again, it's like that little hint of like this would have been a 3 episode resolution in like any other piece of media. But in this movie, we have to accept it and go forward because
Yep.
we have no
Yeah,
time.
the no
And that's
time to
fine because
explain
it's
trope
really
is
something that
very
doesn't
strong
matter.
in this.
Yeah. The only
Yeah,
thing that they
you just-
say that's like an addendum to all that, not even addendum, an addition to all that, is how they get certain resources. Where I think it just Elba's character says, "Yeah, so we got all this from the Russians because why not?"
Oh yeah, the trope of the
Times are
Russians
changing.
can get you anything.
No,
Yeah,
oh,
that's a movie trope.
yeah. Also, too, like I gotta say, it feels like whenever we get into, I guess it goes Guillermo del Toro is an American. It feels like no one can ever get Americans right in movies whenever there's not an American doing it. Because part of me is like, wait, you mean to tell me America wouldn't abandon a
Oh.
weapons platform program? We
make
never
better
abandon weapons platform programs. We make planes that are so dangerous we still haven't used them. They just exist in hangars, and we know they're crazy good. They're just gonna live
We're gonna
there.
make better ones.
And then
that's
you know
all.
what else we're gonna do? We're gonna make better
Yeah,
ones.
we,
They're also just gonna live in hangars.
Look, there's a
Yeah.
guy who he likes talking about history, military history. He's ex-military, and I really like his approach to everything. And the way that he describes a lot of what we do as a country, he's like, it ain't a war crime the first time. And yeah, fat electrician.
Fat electrician.
He's 100% right too.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
it's not a war crime the first time you do that. It is when everyone goes, "Holy shit! Did you see what they did?" And everyone's like, "Whoa! Let's hold on. Let's talk about never doing that again." And yeah,
Yep.
it is one of those things you just have to accept, where it's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, of course that wouldn't happen." And it's like, yeah, it's not just America
then-
either. If you look at humanity as a species over our history, and it's like you put a thing in front of us and then it punches us in the face, and we go, "Oh, you want to fight? Okay." And then it gets really, really unsettling. We are.
I can get mad conspiratorial when it comes to World War One. Trust
Yeah,
me. But yeah, no, I'm right
you have
there
to
with you.
accept
Like, it's
it and be
crazy.
like, "Oh yeah, no, it makes total sense that all of humanity would just roll over and die with no conflict whatsoever." Excuse me. We have to rein in our violent impulses in order to keep existing on this planet. You can't tell me if. What'd you say?
Hold my Maxim machine gun.
Yeah, it's essentially.
Hold my Maxim
yeah,
machine gun, please.
There really is no way that it's like we wouldn't just smash the make more of the giant robot kill button, more of it. Like, it would be way scarier, way faster. We would never pull the plug on the one effective weapon, and we would not have stopped developing them.
But to bring it back to Pacific Rim even more so, something I thought was really funny, maybe Winnie 2 could answer this, was the main guy talking in that bulletin that gave the news Idris Elba's character being all like, "Sorry, man, America, we're gonna back down from this giant gun program, even though we've never done that." Was that movie Gavin Newsom?
Let me check. Hang on.
Oh,
It
yeah,
looks like Gavin. I
that guy
remember watching
does
it being
look
like,
a lot like
"That
the
guy looks
actual
like Gavin
American
Newsom."
politician.
It says on here, Robin Thomas, Julian Barnes, and David Richmond Peck portray UN reps for the United States, Great Britain, and Canada, respectively.
No, he really does look like Gavin Newsom. No, he
That
really
guy-
does.
That's probably what they were
100%,
going for,
100%.
honestly.
Weird.
I was like, damn.
Um,
I mean, I can see Gavin Newsom walking away from weapons because you know, I mean,
Yeah.
insert California meme here of no violence, but
yeah,
like also
everything is
weird
dying.
here
Everyone is
thing,
having issues.
But like,
so before we go any further on that, I
Well,
do want to bring up something that I completely forgot to mention. David, do you know how this ties into video games?
no, I
The
don't.
AI
actually.
voice of Gypsy Danger is Ellen McLean,
Oh, Gladys.
also known as GLaDOS.
100%
Yeah.
that was her.
Yeah.
No.
You can't not hear Glad. Yeah, you know. At first, I was like, oh, that's kind of lame. And then I stopped and I thought about it for like a few more seconds later. I'm like, you know what? It's actually kind of cool. Never mind. I think
They
it's
hired
back.
her for like 4 lines. I really wish they'd had the robot talk more. I'm like, I don't care if it's
Which is
silly,
interesting
but come on.
because
I have to imagine. I have to imagine Gaben would be fine
Probably.
with it.
in the anime,
Like-
they actually have another Jaeger that shows up that is basically the AI talking to the 2 kids in that show the entire way through, all the way to the
Nice.
very end. So it's kind of cool to
Oh.
see them try to continue on with that. So 5 years have passed. Raleigh is now working in construction on this giant bullshit wall, and as he's working, he finds out through television, through all the different news. It's like, hey, yeah, Kaiju broke through the wall in less than a minute.
Hour. 1
So,
hour.
what's close enough? An hour to Kaiju doesn't
Doesn't mean shit to humans either. 1 hour to get through the
Yeah.
supposedly unbreakable line of defense. Yeah, no, you effed. You're done.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know what actually that gets me in that scene is that like I have to like imagine because I'm from Chicago originally, and there's a lot of like New York and Chicago are known for crazy skyscrapers from way back in the day, right? And like and any amount of crazy pictures that we're taking of like
Yep.
dudes just eating lunch with their lunch pails, you know, with all that crazy, right? So I've met older men in Chicago when I was younger talking about those times. And I have to imagine, if these people are supposed to be anything representative of that, to put all of your effort in this meme Mexican Trump wall that didn't exist yet, but now retroactively does because time is a fucking curve and it goes back within itself. I have to imagine the devastation of just like, I put all of my time
Oh,
into
you hear
this.
one of them yell it too. When
All
it
of
breaks,
it.
somebody yells, "What the hell are we even building this thing
Right.
for?" Which is true. Everyone was thinking it when they saw that. They're
Yep.
so like, they look at it and they go, "In an hour they broke through it." So then why are we even building this thing? Like, what's the point? It's gonna break through and it's gonna kill us all anyway. I die an hour later?
Yeah.
So speaking of breaking through it, the only reason why this Kaiju was taken down was because the day before, in this time, Striker Eureka was actually in Australia before it was actually decommissioned, and they're like, oh shit, it's still not taken apart yet. Let's go ahead and bring it out and beat this fucker. And so they managed to kill that Kaiju that came in. But Raleigh, working construction, he's like, well, I guess I'm gonna keep on working construction. I'm gonna talk like this to try to sound like Raleigh, because that's what cool guys do, I guess.
Charlie
But
Hunnam
anyways,
is
I'm working
British,
construction. Yeah, I know, but whatever.
That's what British people sound like.
But Idris Elba comes in and it's like, hey, I need you. I don't want to go. I still need you. Okay. That's essentially how it went.
It was a pretty short conversation. To be fair,
It really
he's
was.
like,
And-
dude, I literally felt my brother die in my brain. And he's like, yeah, but I mean, I'll give you 2 choices. You could die on the wall, or you could die in a giant robot punching this thing in the face. And he's like, all right, well, when you put it
Exactly,
that
yeah.
way, I mean, that sounds pretty good.
Right?
Like, yeah, it's a pretty solid argument. I like
Die defenseless or die defending. There you go.
that. Yeah.
So he ends up going with Pentecost, who's Idris Elba, over to the Shadow Dome, which is basically this giant dome that houses all these different Jaegers that have been quote-unquote decommissioned, and it's the only ones left. They've got Russians, which are piloting the Cherno Alpha, and I believe it's a brother-sister duo.
It is.
It's a massive tank, is basically what it is.
Just a big chunk of metal that punches you.
With a pile driver.
Essentially, yeah.
Then the Chinese trio, known as Crimson Typhoon, which it looked cool, but I don't think in execution it did anything great. And
we can talk about it in a minute.
Yeah, that's.
I have opinions.
I will say that's another missed thing. I really wish we could have at least heard them interact with some of the main cast, because at this point the main cast is Idris Elba. I forget his character's name, Mako, Rayleigh, the father and son, and that's pretty much the main. And then Charlie Day and the other scientist guy who's I forget his guy's name. I forget his name. Like that. Gottlieb, yeah. Like, that's the main squad, and no one else interacts with them other than like the mission control guy who was in the first part and is now here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, man, it's kind of funny how these other two mecha, and we never did they even have a speaking line, like
they did,
other than what they say in their robots.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
They never interact with the main cast.
Which I don't want to count, but it's still technically a voice line.
Yeah.
So, damn.
They spoke.
Really wish.
Well, they also have like a really cool
Words
moment.
were technically said.
They do have a really cool moment when Mako ends up, chasing the rabbit, and like this is jumping ahead a little bit, but when Mako chases the rabbit, and you see all the destruction that's about to happen, the two Russians are standing there like, all right, let's go. And they just slowly walk away where everybody else is just running for their lives.
See where this is going.
So, you know what's funny? When I saw that, a part of me was thinking, oh, they have seen this before, or they're just doing the Russian meme. Of like, they don't care.
So what I got from it was the first one. Because they're in a Mark 1 and they've been fighting for like 7 years. So I think it's they've seen this before and they're like, yep, just going to call this one, and they just walk away.
But coming back to where we were, so we're introduced to all these characters and all their Jaegers. We're introduced to Mako Mori, who I think is probably the best character in this entire movie.
It's not true.
What? Okay, no, fight me.
You're going to put her above the goodest boy in the film?
The ugly dog?
Whoa, no.
Okay.
Ugly dog? I'm not even like I'm not even like a fan of Dog of Breeze, but like that's a good boy.
Thank you.
He's so well behaved.
Yep.
He looks so happy.
He was happy. I take back what I said.
There to make everyone else feel better, just happy and wants to like say hi to people. You know, there were maintenance people like about to. What?
Remember when he runs up to Mako, and then Hercules, the guy's dad, he goes like, "Hey, you leave her alone." He's like, "It's okay." He's like, "No." He just gets really happy whenever he sees a pretty girl. It's like,
oh, he was telling him not to slobber all over her.
Yeah.
Because, and I've seen dogs do this, especially ones that have like the messed up jowls, because humans like genetic engineering. When they get really excited, they start salivating and like breathing really hard, and then they will literally just drool everywhere. Funny enough, my cat does that.
Does your cat have jowls?
No, he just
it's a Maine Coon?
He's not. He's like a short hair, like really dark brown, almost black. When you are scratching like his chest, or the sides of his head, he'll start drooling out the side of his mouth, and then just drool globlets will land on you.
So
we're pretty sure he's a dog.
From there, we are introduced to Mako, and then from that point, we're actually introduced to the brand new, quote-unquote, refurbished Gypsy Danger. And it looks even better than it did before. And I was so happy to see it. They go into all this, all these different things about what makes it cool, how each and every single Jaeger there has muscle strands that are connected to different thermonuclear engines. I'm like, what?
So they define, and this is, I love that they were like, we're going to define the robots. and everything we say is going to be really stupid. We're going to say Gypsy Danger is made of iron. We haven't built anything out of iron in 200 years, but we're going to say this massive robot of space technology is made out of iron.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure, I believe you. I mean, that makes that robot's body less advanced than the Titanic. But okay.
Yeah, we've been using alloys for a long time. That's true. Yeah.
Why
Most
would you
things we've been
say it's
using
an
are alloys,
iron
yeah.
core? Why would it be made of iron? One, two, which is really funny watching him get upset. I have a friend of mine, and he's like, "Why would you make a robot out of iron and put it in the ocean? It would rust in like a day." He is correct. It would literally disintegrate like within a week.
I mean, it doesn't last long anyway, so whatever.
No, but it doesn't last long because of the giant alien death machines.
Yeah.
And the government changing the Jaeger. Oh, what was the conspiracy within the organization? They're like, oh, yeah, we can't make the Jaegers like be cost effective because they're made out of iron anyways.
Well,
Yeah,
Oh,
let's
shit.
go ahead and waste more money. Okay.
The design of the robots is also really weird because it makes no sense. None of it makes, which I love, but it's also so stupid.
He's in the pocket of big iron.
It, yes. Also, how the two of you have been in a car, I believe, correct?
I think
Where
so.
you turn a wheel,
I-
and when you turn the
I'm
wheel, it
familiar with
moves the tires. So you
Yeah,
kind of get
yeah.
that?
You
Okay,
can
so why the fuck does the giant robot need to have half a mile long sticks that you move to make the legs move? How does that make sense?
Man, it's all about movement.
Why?
Man. It's all about moving your
But-
body, making sure you can do the DVR, you know, all that bullshit.
Why when they pull the floor away, is there a massive turbine of spikes that if you fall into it you will die?
Okay, yeah, that.
Why is that a main thing?
I did want to talk about
What?
that, but yeah.
Okay, listen. The joke I was going to say, you brought up in earnest, which was, it's easy. I have easy answer to this. It's because how else would you have a tense scene in which you have a machine that will eat your legs if you fuck up while walking?
True.
Where would you put the leg eating part of the machine if there wasn't a giant hole there?
Fine. And then
Come on, you need-
and that's a plot point, so I can't talk about it. But we'll talk about that one later. Oh my god.
All right, so moving
That will
forward
make
then,
my brain
just
hurt
to move
more.
just to proceed. So at that point, Raleigh finds
keep
out
talking.
that he's actually going to be training whoever comes up as audition pieces, I guess, to help see who's drift compatible with him, so he can actually pilot Gypsy Danger again.
Yes.
Mako is there judging everybody, but she's secretly judging Raleigh instead. Raleigh catches it. He's like, you know what?
love
Why don't you come here and, beat my
The
ass?
way that the best part of that whole scene is he walks up, he puts the stick, and then he leans on one leg like he's really annoyed and sassy, and then he looks at her and he's like, "You keep doing this thing," and I'm like, Jesus.
Yep.
It's so honest. Like it feels like he broke character for a second, and he's just like, "What is that? What are you doing?"
Why are you doing this?
Oh,
And so they actually
good.
have like a little play fight, but it turns out in doing so, they find out that they are both drift compatible. And it's
Yep.
a really cool scene, and honestly, it's quite a bit of like character growth there, because you're like, okay, cool, I like this. But then Marshall Pentecost, Idris Elba is like, no, she can't join you. I have my reasons. You'll find out who your pilot is tomorrow. Fuck off. And yeah, they do a lot of cursing in this movie, surprisingly. I honestly did not see the need for it. But then we're also introduced to the two kaiju experts.
Oh, actually, real quick, because of that, I part of once again conspiracy theory / a little bit of like, I think there was someone in the writer room that wanted more. Of like, I think the real reason is for me not just because vengeance and
Darkness.
being overprotective of her is also like they kind of make it seem like Mako is like even more compatible in general than the average person. A part of me kind of thinks that because I've been thinking about this since you guys have mentioned how there's supposed to be a single movie, Guillermo del Toro, and then it kind of went a different direction going into the second one. That if there wasn't someone in the first movie who was like, we should maybe introduce the idea of people like not needing a connection Here's Mako. She's perfect in every way for connections. We're going to imply that, but not say it, but we're going to heavily imply. And then if we need to bring it up later, hey guys, no, that's not a weird thing for us to bring in this second movie. We have Mako right here.
So I do want to get into that towards the end again. Yeah.
Towards the end, so write that one down.
Mm-hmm.
So before we go into any of that, let's talk about the two scientist dudes that we have here. We've got Newton Geisler and Herman Gottlieb. They are basically, how would I describe them? What's that old sitcom that Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon were in? The Odd Couple. They're basically the Odd Couple of
Yep.
science, kaiju science. Gottlieb, who...
But one of them's just a mathematician.
Yes, Gottlieb is the mathematician, and he's the one who, if you've watched Game of Thrones, he's actually one of the men who were part of the Watch who ended up trying to take over the Wildling camp and ended up being part of the reason that Jon Snow ended up dying. So
Jon Snow dies?
Yes and no.
I'm not going to get into that.
Okay.
But anyways, he's a dick.
I'm gonna lose my shit.
Yeah,
if I talk
we're not
about
going to get into that. But he was a
This is
major
not
dick
an
in that.
HBO
But he's
podcast.
also kind of a dick in this. But he's also really funny. Newton, played by Charlie Day, is very unhinged, but he's known as a kaiju groupie because he tattoos himself all the different kaiju that have invaded the world, and he basically wants to get a full-on understanding of them. He wants to understand them inside and out.
Fanboy.
When we first see Newton doing his experiments, he's taking apart different kaiju specimen, and you find out that all these kaiju have the same DNA. Like, they have the same structure and everything on the inside. And so he's like, this is weird. And he's like, you know what? I want to go ahead and try to do a drift with a kaiju brain. And everyone just laughs at him. They're like, no, what are you doing? That's stupid. Why would you do this? And Gottlieb is like, hey, so these kaiju, they've been coming in, at a certain frequency, and it's going to get worse. And they all, start freaking out about that, and that's why they try to move forward with getting all this shit done to bomb the breach. But more on that later. Then we find out that the next pilot is going to be Mako after all. Who wants to talk about this particular scene?
Well, I once again, Idris Elba's character Maxwell,
Marshall
right?
Pentecost,
right? Marshall. I don't like him. Yeah,
Marshall's his rank.
He clearly, he clearly does not
Right.
want this to happen. He is very much against it still, even though he's so against it, even as things go completely tits up incredibly quickly. He's willing to basically threaten the mission and the entire reason why he brought this guy back, which, by the way, I don't know how he didn't know the main Rayleigh was in Alaska when he was in Alaska for years, just chasing down the wall. If it always felt like he didn't want to bring him back, but now he kind of has no choice. Because he is very quick to be like, either get in line.
Remember
or
what
get
he
the
said? He
fuck
goes
out.
like, "You are my first choice. All the other ones have died."
Yes.
Yeah.
He literally tells him everyone else is dead. You get to be number one.
So yeah, it's so it's so funny how there is no one else, but he is so ready and willing to let Gypsy Danger just exist in a hangar. Because if Mako wasn't going to pilot him, and really the reason why he brought him back wasn't going to pilot him, then I guess we just don't have Gypsy Danger. Foreshadowing.
Right. So
Because the frustrating part is because there's how many people? It's upwards of at least 11 or 12 people, all with sticks, hanging out in the back in that one training scene. I feel like if you really meant your shit, and I grant you can't do it because you can't let your main characters not have access to a Jaeger when things goes tits up, But it's he didn't even threaten him with, I'm just going to grab 2 random people from the training mission and throw them in there. Right? At least show initiative and put pressure on the cast to work against Idris Elba. It was just I'm going to talk shit in the elevator, increase stakes, and then do nothing with these increased stakes. I just have a line to say. Go.
with that being said, Will, what happens with Mako?
She gets a shoe.
That's Hannibal, motherfucker.
Yeah.
No. Mako gets handed a
No.
shoe. How many times have you watched this
She's
movie?
handed.
Oh yeah, I forgot. My
Yeah.
Sorry,
Deodorant,
I was
hand
thinking of
shoe,
what
and
happened to my
then she
goddamn
goes
shoe.
crazy.
Okay, so
Yeah, she's handed a shoe and then goes crazy.
she gets handed a shoe
A shoe.
with zero context to the audience and a lot of context to Mako and to Pentecost. Clearly, it's a big, important thing for the two of them. It is a really tiny shoe, so the most you could pull is probably a kid's shoe, but you don't get anything else yet. Then they jump to the two of them actually being loaded into the Jaeger, turning the Jaeger on,
Well,
and being like,
hang on,
all right.
1 second. When they turn on the Jaeger, Mako comes out after he goes like, "Hey, I'm gonna be on this side because my other arm's pretty shot." And she walks in.
Oh, his nerves are probably gone.
Oh yeah, and she walks in, cool as fuck, wearing their really awesome suits that they have. Which I gotta say, their suits remind me of Dead Space because of the way how they have that spine thing going up. I don't know. It's really cool.
True.
She comes out and she goes, "Hey, so what are you gonna tell me? I mean, don't you have anything to say?" He goes like, "Well, just to let you know, you're about to ready to read my brain. So yeah, you're gonna find out." Anyways, continue.
You know what? I will give the movie credit for restraint. That scene could have been done drastically differently, and it could have gone really weird really quickly if they really wanted to. But they showed restraint, which I will give them credit for. Because they could have easily done the classic, okay, we jacked in, right, our minds are connected, and she looks at him and goes, "Really, dude?"
Yeah, they could have done the really stupid, like, oh, the haha, that's, no, it's genuine, and that's one of those things that they're, again, this is kind of stupid, everyone knows it, but we're going to sell it as genuine. And he's just looking at her, and she's like, "Aren't you going to say anything?" And he goes, "No, there's no point. You're literally about to read my mind. Like, there's absolutely no reason for me to talk." And that's true.
Yeah, see, that is a great use of world mechanics. Because,
there's no
like,
point.
that would be once again, it reminds me of, like, other pieces of media, which it leans into how Guillermo del Toro and, Artur, director more so than I'm here to do what the studio tells me, is because, like, if this would have been made by anybody else, it would have been a monologue, right? It wouldn't have utilized that, because it kind of reminds you of, like, I forget his name, like David, the guy who does Sopranos, David something, it's like Sharp, I think. Doesn't matter.
God, you're putting me on the spot here.
Yeah.
Anyways, continue. I'll look it up. David Chase.
Yeah, I like how that ended, right? David Chase, yes. I like how that ended. It just cut to black. It doesn't matter what he does from this point forward. His little adventure that you need to see him for is done. You don't need that shit. I like it when people utilize the reason why the show or the mechanics of the movie exist, and they just kind of cut away exposition and just let the scene play out. And like Pacific does that a lot, by the way, which I actually really do like.
Yes, it does. But I want somebody to talk about what we actually see here next.
Remind me.
So in the scene, they drift and they are compatible. He gives her a really fast rundown warning, which is all very true. He's like, random access memories, it's going to jump through points in both of our lives. Don't touch them, just let them go. The last thing he says is the drift is silence. And that's to tell you how, as a human, this is how it would feel. You would have all of these memories flood your brain that are yours, that are the other person's, and they would all feel like strong and real. But if you just essentially treat them like white noise and you don't do anything with it and you just let it happen, then it will settle in, and then the link will hit and you'll be linked up and you'll essentially both be one person, which has to be trippy, but that's how the drifting works.
Right. And then immediately I will say, I did like, once again, the visuals of the scene. We don't just get to see her traumatic moments immediately. It's simple things that, like, I will admit are a little cartoonish and very much like Opulent, where it's like, who has a sand garden that's that massive in Japan? And you know what I mean? Like, I know there's a lot of space. There's space in Japan. I'm not saying they all live on top of each other, but it's like, okay, maybe you came from a really rich family. That's cool and everything, but it's like, they're hitting all these little things in which that's part of her life and growing up, and you see conversation with her father and stuff. So I do like how it also kind of feels like maybe Rayleigh's having to navigate through that, possibly, because you do kind of hear him in the background.
So
because I thought I heard him in the background.
you're thinking of a little further, which after they do it, And I mean, they all knew this was going to happen, which is the whole point of the test. They're good for like a minute, and you're like, okay, so move the arms and they're just doing simple calibration stuff. And then after like a few minutes of being there, they start desyncing hard because he looks over at her and his brain just plays the trauma of his brother getting ripped out of the robot, and it's like, well, yeah, that's how the human brain works.
Which knocks him
He's
out of
literally
alignment at first.
doing the thing, it not knocks him out of alignment, and once he gets knocked out, she gets dragged into her own trauma that he didn't know was there, because that's how the drift works, and she's never drifted, so she's not experienced. He's able to pull himself back and be like, give me a minute, I'll be fine. It's just, I knew I was going to have to get past this, so I'm going to be okay. She's never done this before, so she has no idea when they drop out of alignment that you run the risk of falling into a memory, which is what happens,
rabbit.
which is what they call chasing the rabbit. And honestly, this is one of the best parts in the movie where he's trying to get her attention and she's staring forward, and they just start turning off the lights in the room, making it fade to black, fading his voice out, and then it's just her, and then everything is darkness and she's alone, and then it cuts to her walking forward as you get like this fall of snow, and then she's a child again. That is one of the best dissolves in the entire movie.
Absolutely. It was spine-tingling.
I don't know why that part is done so well. The rest of the movie, they don't quite go that hard, but holy shit,
They wanted to elicit that trauma, and they did it very, very well.
Yeah.
And to lean into letting the visualizations talk a bit more, this is the other part where I really liked it, which I feel like, because they don't explain it, but I feel like, oh, is your arm really jacked up from that thing? But at the same time, you've been doing construction for the last 5-7 years, however long it's been. Your arm can be that messed up. You're doing construction, dangerous stuff going up and down. Then I thought of, oh, it's not because your arm is messed up, because you were fighting with it earlier just fine. It's because I think he was trying to mitigate that chance of him slipping out because he takes his brother's position. Because I bet he probably knows if he takes the right side and he looks left, it's going to be an instant trigger for him.
Well, if he was on the left side and he looked right, it would be the exact same position he was in when his brother died. If he takes the right side and looks left, it's opposite and different, plus it's not his brother there. He was probably hoping there'd be enough different that it wouldn't trigger. But I mean that's how trauma works. If you're in a room and something happens, and 4 years later you walk into a room that's similar enough, your brain might just dig out, even if it's just the way it feels. You'll all of a sudden be a little on edge. You'll be like, I don't feel good. Why don't I like this? And then if you analyze it later, it's, oh, that room actually reminds me of this terrible thing that happened to me 5 years ago. And it's your brain remembering the trauma. So,
Yep.
So
plus side.
It's like they don't give him credit, and I'm like, I gotta give the boy, my man, credit. Like he's trying his best, But they're just like, oh no, you fucking piece of shit, you shouldn't be here, loser.
Yeah, no,
he's actually really smart about this.
Prick. He was really an insufferable prick. Watching him
the main
get the
character is
shit
really
kicked
smart.
out of him, I was like, yeah, no, that was great. I liked watching him just lose. And it's like the main character wasn't trying. He's like, I'm going to be restrained. I won't yell at you.
Apologize.
Then he starts hitting him, and it's like, it just keeps getting worse, and I'm like, he's just going to break his fucking arm.
Yep.
He's like, I don't give a shit. You are an ass. I don't like you.
But Mako going down the rabbit, that scene real quick, that was, like, it's the closest you get to feeling like this is not a Pacific Rim, it's a Godzilla movie. It's a large kaiju thing. It's like, I gotta see it. I know you've talked about it. I gotta go watch like a Godzilla. What is the one that did in 2016? The reboot from the Japanese side.
Shin.
Shin
Shin
Godzilla?
is so good.
Yeah.
I mean, you should watch
that.
-1 too. That film is phenomenal.
I will when it's on his.
That'll be
his
a while.
Oh, okay. Well, there.
I'll buy it.
I mean, -1's on Netflix, and the -1 black and white is going to hit Netflix soon.
I think
so they'll
next
have
month.
both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the reason why I say that is because I like basically everything about that scene, right? The positioning, the helplessness, the running away. I will say the kaiju does feel a bit like an asshole because it could have just swan dive, ate the kid.
Kaiju?
But
Yeah.
instead, it's like the kaiju's like, nah, I have a bunch of free time in my hands. I'm going to be an asshole.
He was literally singling her out.
Yeah. It's
Like,
chasing a small child, and I'm like, damn, that's fucked up.
For for all the talk that Charlie Day goes out of his way to figure out, I think after
It's
this scene,
actually during,
a
yeah.
little bit before the scene, where he finds out that they actually have like similar DNA or like almost replicated. A part of me is like, maybe that one wasn't, because not every single kaiju's an asshole. This kaiju just must be a special kind of asshole, because that was like almost horror, like horror movie levels of malice.
Yeah.
For no reason. Very, very, very Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Esque, like, yeah, I'm just gonna follow you.
Yeah, no, that
I
was
don't
very
wanna talk about
Cloverfield.
kaiju
Why does it
assholes
keep
until
hitting
we see
us?
the balloon knot later, all right?
Oh. So yeah, no, that scene, like, see, that's the part where Charlie Day's character and him discovering that it feels like it was trying to go two different ways with the kaiju, because that kaiju showed so much personality compared to the others that we've seen, and then Charlie Day's like, no, they're all the same actually, and it's all like,
So it's
What?
Well, they're all.
and then after that, they actually do kind of act pretty similar. Like there's a very like pseudo hive mind going on, but then Mako's flashback memory shows one that is very much like, no, it's it's a horror movie. It could just be all in her head, and maybe it wasn't going that slow. Don't get me wrong, but it feels like the way how they kind of introduce drift. That isn't just your memories. It might be like the true events of your memories, right? There doesn't seem to be too much like exaggeration. Granted, once again, movie, very little time. Maybe you can make shit worse in your own memories, and it reflects that in a drive. We don't know.
Well, human memory is fallible, so.
That's very
that is
true.
true.
Just look at me.
That has been tested many a time. Yeah, right. we've heard. Sean, have you watched this movie like 3 times so far?
So,
What red shoe?
speaking of memory, let's talk about what Newton does while she's chasing that rabbit. Now, just to also double back real quick, while she's chasing the rabbit, she's trying to defend herself in her memory, but in doing so, because she's still connected to Gypsy, the plasma cannon that the arm turns into, which is really cool because when you finally see the zoom out shot, you actually see it transform into that plasma cannon. I just really like that. When she actually does pull out her arm in her memory, it loads up the plasma cannon in real life, and it causes danger for everybody because she's loading it up to the full blast. And when you do that, like, everybody starts evacuating. That's when you do see the Russians walk away slowly, like, but yeah. What were you gonna say, David?
About that, so that the Charlie Day scene. So when this is a little bit of skipping, but a little bit not. This moment here with her charging the hand cannon when she's in her going on the rabbit thing, is I thought was really interesting because it's like she's clearly trapped in her own memory, but she's still cognizant enough to know that she's not helpless right now in real life. She has a giant gun because she helped design the Jaeger, the refit of this Jaeger, right, of Gypsy Danger. And so while she is currently living in this moment, she has the wealth and burden of knowledge of being a full-grown adult of, oh, I actually have a giant gun, right? And that kind of goes to, I'll bring it up again later with Charlie's character, where I'm like, I don't know how you didn't think that was going to happen. We just had a scene of what happens with someone with knowledge and losing control of their body. What would happen if they had that burden of knowledge, the consequences of said actions, sir.
So, let's move on to that part then.
So yeah, I like the scene with Mako because it feels a little bit foreshadowy.
So let's talk about the Charlie Day scene here real quick. So Charlie, or Newton, decides that he's gonna make a drift-compatible machine so he can actually drift with the spare kaiju brain that they have. It's a really, like, hodunk piece of shit, and then the kaiju brain is just, like, on its last leg.
Oh, it has clear feelings of I built this in my garage in a dusty, broken down backyard
Pretty
barn
much,
kind of a feel.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
And while
Yeah.
he's, like, setting it all up, he goes, like, just to let you know, Herman, if I'm dead after all this, just know that I win because at least I was able to go ahead and do this, proving you wrong. If I'm still alive, I still win regardless.
If I'm dead, it's all your fault. You drove me to this.
Yep.
I love the spite.
Spite.
At first, I thought Charlie Day's character. Charlie Day became Newt for me with that scene. Because at first I'm like, oh, you're just gonna have him be the wild card from Always Sunny in
Wild card!
Philadelphia, and then that level of spite coming through and being targeted towards another person but yet still respecting that person for it not to feel venomous is like, oh no, he's actually playing a character. Like this isn't Charlie from Always Sunny. This is Newt now.
Absolutely, he was. Now, when he drifts with that kaiju, he actually gets to see the full idea. Well, not the full idea, but part of an idea as to what the kaiju really are. And they are part of a race in another dimension called the Precursors. And they
have a name?
do all clone each other. Yeah, that's their name.
That's a boring name, but okay.
Yeah, I know. But they basically clone all these kaiju, and that's how they all have that same DNA. They are part of a hive mind, basically, but they all are just straight up clones, and that's all the information he was able to get at that point. And basically, the fact that the kaiju are trying to terraform Earth because, they can. They just know that they can. So Marshall Pentecost, during that whole thing with Mako, comes back and is like, hey, you need to do another drift with another brain. He's like, well, I don't have one. We're like, we can get you one. And then that's how he introduces him to Hannibal Chow. But at the same time, after all this is said and done, we've got 2 new kaiju that show up right over in Hong Kong. And they have really interesting names. The one that looks like a giant monkey is called Leatherback. And the one that's kind of like a lizard is called Odachi. What were your takes on these kaiju when you first see them?
I didn't have much of an opinion on them until the EMP happened, and I'm like, oh, you guys came to party for real. Okay.
Now, the interesting
interesting
thing about that is that the EMP doesn't go off until Crimson Typhoon and Cherno Alpha show up, and along with Striker Eureka, and they're all going out there. They're about ready to, lay some shit down. And after the kaiju realize, oh yeah, we don't need this, they EMP blast them, basically disabling everything. And so,
well, actually, it's a bit different. If I remember correctly, I'm watching it. I think they kill the first 2, and or they kill Dynamo. They kill the Chinese crew, unfortunately, first. And then as the Russian one is trying to get a little ground and pound going, and Stryker starts running towards them, that's when the EMP guy feels like, all right, I technically do have an EMP. He starts charging. Then the Russian people died. Then the EMP went off, and then he's like, I'm gonna go now. Yep. Bye. Like it very much felt like, once again, I maybe there is a bit more malice in them, where it's like, if they were truly methodical, they just could have walked up, EMP'd, and then walked past all of them. Instead, it was like, we don't need to use this, but at the same time, it'd be kind of funny to leave you here if we just walked past you.
Pretty much, and that's exactly what they did, except for Striker Eureka. I believe it's Leatherback that is like basically circling Striker Eureka the entire time. They're like, you want to do something? Let's go ahead and do something really stupid. And they go out there with flare guns and then shoot it right in the face.
They get it in one of its 6 eyes.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's a good way to die quickly, but then we Homeboy shows up.
Homeboy being Gypsy Danger.
Homeboy comes.
Do you remember why Gypsy Danger works?
Oh yes, that's right. It's because G. Willikers, he's analog. It's like
that doesn't make any sense. We're just gonna ignore all of that.
He's also nuclear powered, and the original plan is for Stryker to run the payload in. Oh man, I mean,
so
weird how this one robot can do it all.
Right?
Wink.
Yeah, they do lean in pretty heavy on the concept of the fighting. It is disappointing that the other 2 giant robots get taken out very quickly and don't get a whole lot done. But also with how they've been ramping up the giant monsters, those 2 were already outclassed before the fight started.
True.
As a personal aside, I don't like the way that Crimson Typhoon fights, because that's not how you use a saw. That's just not how that works. Like, they're sitting there slicing the outer layer of its skin open and it's hurting it, but I'm like, that's not what you would do with a buzz saw. Like, that's not how you cut through a tree with a giant saw. You hold the saw to it until it goes through the tree.
or push it through.
Yeah, or you
slowly,
push it through, or you
whichever
like
you
grab
wanna
it
do
with
first.
2 arms, slam one of them in, and like ride it up. Or
Yeah.
but they don't do any of that.
I
They
think
just
they
sit
were
there,
more all about
slipping
style
and
rather than
slipping,
substance.
and then they get crushed.
Yeah, I really thought they were gonna do that. In all honesty, I thought that was the plan because they would literally grab it with both arms, slide it back. When I saw all three blades, I'm like, oh, but like you could clearly like drag him over your body within the blade in the middle, and it would just cut him in half. And it's just like, no,
Yeah, but that
slice,
backwards
slice,
yeet was pretty
cute little
cool, right?
slices. That was
That was very
cool.
cool.
That was cool.
I like the design for Crimson Typhoon because it's asymmetrical. I just like that design. It looks really cool. It has the reverse joint like bird legs. It has a really neat design. All of the robots have very cool, unique designs.
Mm-hmm.
They're terrible in a fight, but they look really cool.
Yeah, a part of me wished. So I thought honestly when this scene started, I I have a bad habit of doing this. I'll check the time left in the movie. And when this scene starts, there's like at least 45 minutes left in the movie. I think when this fight starts, maybe it's like 55, something like that.
Close
The
to
movie
an
is
hour.
surprisingly long.
This is like halfway.
And I'm like, okay, they're gonna overcome this, and then these people are probably gonna get wrecked when it's a triple because the triple one has been getting highlighted since like 35
Yep.
minutes into the movie, right? So I thought clearly the triple was gonna be the one that calls the robot line. Wrong. It's the very first fight with the
Yeah.
robot line.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, oh no.
They really crush them fast.
They do. So
Yeah. I'm like, whoa, like really these category 1s and 2s, while they did chip away at the resources, are like effectively child's play compared to the category 3s and 4s
Oh,
that
yeah.
show up, because the category 3 took out category 3 was Gypsy Danger when it took out Gypsy Danger at first. And then the category 4s have been what they've been dealing with for the last
Yep.
year, I think, right?
Yep.
So I'm just like, geez, they just like don't stand a chance, and then they're still like, build the wall. It's super cool, guys. Trust us.
Yeah, I
government,
don't.
Fuck
it-
yeah.
It's one of those things that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, they know that that's not going to work. The very first kaiju that showed up,
Oh yeah.
we didn't have the Jaegers, and it took them 3 cities were taken out before they killed it.
Yep.
So it's like they know one kaiju could walk around the planet just wiping out population centers and take the whole thing out. So it's like that makes no logical sense, but it's okay. This is a giant monster movie.
So yeah, exactly. For that reason, I thought we would really be getting like, because once again, I knew very little about Pacific Rim going into it, other than robots kaiju fight. I'm like, oh, there's enough time. We can have like a quick fight here, a retreat, lick the wounds, and then deal with, that I thought was gonna happen. But that's, yeah, the two crews that I wanted to see their interaction with a little bit more, because it was basically zero. Just was basically zero, and it stayed zero, and that's all we
Yep.
got.
So, just to move on just a little bit here, Gypsy Danger starts fighting Leatherback, and they end up bringing it into the city of Hong Kong. Meanwhile, Odachi, the lizard one, is actually on its own personal quest. Now, during this time, Newt was actually trying to find Hannibal Chow, and after going through some really detective-type psyops bullshit of trying to find him, he does find him. Hannibal Chow is a giant dick, but
Runs
he
a black
has
market
all
company.
that charisma.
Mhm.
And
His boots are really cool.
he lets him know that he ended up drifting with a
Love the
kaiju,
boots.
and then he kind of gets the idea at that point, like, oh shit, the kaiju's after me. So Hannibal Chow's like, I'm gonna go hide away in my own private bunker. You gotta go with the civvies. So Charlie Day has to go with the civvies and ends up in this giant slaughterhouse, basically, of a...
So I took that scene
Really?
differently, actually. I took it as Hannibal Chow knew exactly what was going to happen to Charlie because it happened to him. You drift in, and then I think, because the way how it played out, because especially how Charlie, how Newt reacted to him afterwards, that if you jack in, I think they kind of like there's a level of like we gotta go get our boy back, right? Because anyone who's gonna jack into the kaiju World Wide Web is probably going to be also a kaiju, and if it isn't, they're gonna want to know why they pursue, because Kodachi, once they finally get a hold of Newt after basically breaking that civilian tunnel open like it was
A buffet.
like
Yeah.
it reminded me of an anteater. Actually, kind of
Yeah,
funny enough.
it pushes its
And when-
hand in, then it jams its face in, and then it starts using its tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was anteater like tongue. It doesn't immediately take him, right? So clearly, this is not just a I am here to eat you. This is a I'm investigating to find out what jacked
Yep.
into our systems, right? And how going on. And so yeah, Hannibal knows way more than he's letting on. But once again,
I also
we
don't
have
think
no
he
time.
does, mainly because he also talks a lot of shit, and that's evident by what happens after all this. So,
True. But the flip side is he also then proceeds to become like a pseudo kaiju expert within his own right. Just like he's basically the malicious capitalistic side of what Nuke
Oh, yeah.
could have been, right? He jacks in, he has all this knowledge about kaiju, and he starts applying this knowledge of kaiju not to understand kaiju but to make
Yep.
money off them, right? So that's why I said like it's very similar to Newt's current journey, and that's taking place, I should say, but it is very much a situation of that's why I feel like he knows, right? Because he took his knowledge of that and was like, I'm gonna make some money off this until the end of the world happens. Fuck it,
Yeah.
whatever, right? Because that's what he planned for. Because he knows what happens when you mess with these people. Well, when you mess with the kaiju's.
So speaking of messing with the kaijus, that fight between Gypsy Danger and Leatherback, really, really cool. It's not as cool as the next scene, or the next fight, but it's so cool to the point where all the action that you just want to happen just does. It's just nonstop hitting, getting the Jaeger where it's thrown backwards, and you can actually see as it's struggling to stand, and it punches the ground in order to try and maintain balance, gets back up, and then just starts wailing on it using different oh god, what are they called? Storage containers that are on
Shipping
the
containers.
pier, and just slams its head in like it's the fucking Hulk. Oh man.
It felt very slapsticky in a way because of the storage container part where it's like his fist could do his equal amount of damage in my opinion, but it's like here, take the kitchen sink while we're fighting in this.
I mean,
place,
you're
you
not
know what I
wrong
mean?
because of everything else that happens after this fight too. With the so
Well, yeah. What is he? Yeah.
so
we'll get that
when they
soon.
kill Leatherback, they go like, "Hey, let's check to make sure that it has a pulse," because at the very beginning they originally shoot Knifehead thinking that it's dead, and he wants to make sure. Let's go ahead and make sure it doesn't have a pulse. So then they just blast it a couple times, like, haha, no pulse. So then Gypsy Danger is going out, and it's like, okay, we need to find this other one. That way we can go ahead and kill it. And it shows up after Gypsy Danger shows up after it discovers Newt, and it fucking coolest entrance to this fucking fight. The best thing, and it's even in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
It's carrying a goddamn tanker and uses it as a bat.
Yeah. That's it. Get that kitchen
Yeah.
sink going.
It's so dumb, but it's so cool
Very.
at the same time. I was just beaming every time I see that on screen. The fight
That part
happens
also has a musical cue for it, where
Oh.
it just starts kicking up with a theme
Yep.
to tell you, oh, see the giant ship? Yes, we are literally going to do that. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I mean, at least they're letting me know.
But even then, like when they do the fight, they do a bunch of really stupid shit. Like at one point, they take Gypsy Danger, it gets thrown into a building, and as it's thrown, it has its arm extended, and it ends up going into this office building, and it manages to go touch those hanging balls. I don't know what they're called, but it's the like silver balls that are just hanging there, and it goes like.
Yeah. I forget. I think the term for it is cat's cradle. That's not what the actual thing is called. I think I remember buying it once. I think someone called it a cat's cradle, which I know that's not what that is because that's a thing with like tying of a yo-yo move. But I remember it being like someone called it a cat's cradle once when I was a kid, and that kind of stuck in my brain.
Now,
They actually do that joke twice in
I'll
the
probably-
movie, which I found surprising.
what was the second one? I don't remember.
That is the second one.
Then what was the
The
first one?
first one, they're on the pier and they're shooting Leatherback in the stomach to kill it, and as they go backwards, it dies, and it starts
Oh,
slowing
yeah.
down, and you see Gypsy's heel grind to a halt, and then smack one of those metal pilings that you would tie a ship to.
Oh
It
yeah.
taps it just enough to knock it over, and then a bird flies away off of it.
Yep.
So they do that joke twice. I didn't remember that first one until we just saw it. I just saw it recently. I only remembered the second one.
Yeah, the second one is the one that mainly stands out.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's fighting Odachi, and Odachi also has this thing where it spits out this acid. And so the first thing that they do is they rip out its acid sac. I'm like, oh my god. And while they're fighting it, it's trying to use its acid against it, and it manages to vent its coolant and freezes everything that's like within its mouth and then just crushes it. And then at that point, Odachi's like, no, knocks it over, suddenly sprouts wings, and then flies up into the air up to get past the atmosphere, I think. And they're like, what are we gonna do? This is awful. What are we gonna do? And what do they fucking do?
Big
A
sword.
goddamn chainsaw just pops out, and it's done it in the most cheesy way too. He's like, I think we're out of options here, Mako. No, we have a sword. And
He's like, wait, what?
it's like
The look on
okay.
his face of,
We have-
we're out of weapons, and she goes, no, we still have one.
No.
And he's like, wait, what?
My thing is this: I don't think the original Gypsy Danger actually had a sword.
Nope, she added that.
Yeah,
That was an
thing.
it's just
aftermarket
hers.
thing.
And so she's the only one who actually knew that. And like to him, it's like you're unlocking this new thing for me. I had no idea. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, we have a sword." Cheesy thing ever? No, I think it was valid.
Although, pet peeve.
Okay, so my thing is, other people had to have known it. This is where the only time the main character really looks really, really stupid.
Yeah.
Because I feel like someone should have given him the specs, right? And no one did. I can't imagine she did it all on her own. But a part of me kind of wishes that like Mako just like slid a 20 and to some guys like, hey, put a sword in the arms.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody. That's for me only.
This is for me. This is mine.
Because she wasn't gonna be the pilot. That was the whole. That was the whole structure from the beginning. No, she's not allowed. But then here comes this perfect weapon that no one decided to tell this guy about. The only pilot. So it's just like, yeah, no, this definitely feels like a little like it makes the main character look a little dumb, but also at the same time, let's go with the other route of like Mako's secretly a genius, where she's like, no, I was always gonna be the pilot. I was just gonna finagle my way in, and I had my weapon waiting for me.
Yeah.
So
I will say, pet peeve. I don't know if I think they eventually got it right, but for the longest time, whenever they represented the sword on any sort of statue or thing, they always represented it in its segmented form, and I'm like, that's not even how it works in the movie. It's only on screen for 20 seconds, and that's not how it works. It comes out all segmented and looking like a chain whip, and then it pulls itself tight so that all the pieces of metal latch into each other to become a long, hard piece of metal that cuts things.
but Will, I'm gonna make one argument for you, and this should probably solve it. You ready? Live action anime.
I don't know what
Yeah,
that means.
yeah.
It's an anime, but in
Yeah.
live action. Therefore, it doesn't have to make sense. It just has to look cool.
No, I mean, it doesn't make sense on those statues and figures that they
Well,
couldn't
yeah.
get that right. That was the only part that bothered me about the sword. I will say I really like when she cuts it in half and they give you a nice freeze frame for a second of the giant winged creature split in half as the giant robot is like, and now we fall back to Earth.
Oh, which is so fucking cool the way that they handle that. Oh my god. David, what happens here?
So, it definitely looks like this Gypsy Danger is hitting effectively terminal velocity. It is on the metal is heating up. It's wrapping around it. This is pretty much like if this were to land full speed onto the ground.
It would nuke
It would
everything. Yeah.
basically do. Yeah, it's a cataclysmic event.
Everyone
like,
dies.
what's that old statistic that if like a meteor the size of a Rose Bowl, which is one of the smaller stadiums, hits Earth, we all die, right? So like Gypsy Danger has the potential to like nuke half the Earth maybe with this landing, but then all of a sudden magic, like it's not really a laser beam out of the chest, but it kind of gets used like one later on. Like heat exhaust, like on the front of the chest, manages to get enough propulsion to basically stop an apocalyptic
It's the big
event
old
from
chess
happening.
piece.
Which, by the way, why aren't we using that? That should be something we use all the time. That should be your opening move.
I agree, but maybe it drains too much energy. I don't know.
Maybe,
But-
maybe. I gotta admit that it was very impressive. That watching it fall. Well, once again, another thing where it's like, it just Elba knew, the guy who never rode Gypsy Danger, just knows. Hey, yeah, just put that thing in reverse. Put the thing on it. You know.
Well, technically, he tells them not to do that. He tells them to release all the shock absorbers on the robot and then ball up, like to literally get into like the fetal position in the robot, so that when it hits the ground, theoretically it would like bounce or roll, rather than smacking into the ground and just that's it, it's gone. It's a pancake.
Oh, so he told him to basically create a meteor.
Yeah, he told them to essentially turn it into like
Okay.
a boulder so that they would hit the ground and like probably roll, as opposed to just face planting a belly flop, which would definitely kill them and blow up the robot. And instead, he tells her to vent the reactor and shoot it out the chest, acting like a giant jet engine or rocket engine that just does a ton of reverse thrust, which adjusts where they land and also slows them down enough so that when they hit the ground, it's like a really high fall, but the robot's designed to be dropped into drop zones from a decent height and survive. So they wind up living.
Okay, so I didn't actually hear what Edgar Elba's character
Yeah.
said. I just remember that part happening because there was so much live shit happening. So I just
It's
didn't
one of those
remember what
things
he
that
said.
I didn't really, I don't know if I ever paid attention to it. It's just I've watched it enough that I know what's happening so I can pay attention to more of the pieces going on. So I just picked up, oh, he told him to do something. They ignored him completely. They
To
didn't
be
even
fair,
at all
they
do what he
that throughout the
said.
entire movie.
Yeah, they do that a lot.
It feels like everyone basically everyone on ground is afraid of Idris Elba, and the moment they get into the robot, they're like, "Fuck
Pretty
Idris
much.
What's he
Elba."
gonna do? Come out here and
Because-
yell at me?
Well, it's all
the
fuck
beginning,
Idris Elba
leave the
until
tanker
they
alone.
find out that he's dying from radiation poisoning.
Yeah, right. Then it's like, yo, you're actually pretty cool, actually.
So Gypsy lands, and it's like, all right, let's go ahead and reset that clock. And then while Newt is out there, still trying to figure out what to do, he goes back to Hannibal Chow and goes like, "You bitch," or something. Well, he says "bitch" at one point, but I don't remember the entire thing. But
He says I think he says you owe me a kaiju brain, bitch.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
didn't call him a bit. Yeah, that's the part.
So
where it comes
he does go to where Odachi's corpse is, and they're trying to find out how to get the brain. Apparently, the brain is not intact, and they're like, "Well, that sucks." But then they also find out that there is a little baby kaiju or a little baby Odachi inside of it, and it's like, "Oh shit, it was pregnant." So hold the fucking phone here. How the fuck is this thing pregnant?
So we haven't talked
Yeah.
about this yet, but I didn't realize it until because recently my brain's just been doing a lot more thinking about biopunk as a setting. The aliens are super advanced. I mean, they can rip a hole through dimensions, and it's just normal. But the aliens are biopunk advanced, so they're living creatures, and all of their tech is based around biology and living things. Their giant dimensional portal creator is a living portal that goes to another world. They literally create the kaiju, they clone them all, and then they basically use character sliders like it's an MMO. Be like, okay, this one's going to have more of an exoskeleton, and this one's going to be taller, and this one's going to be angrier, and this one's going to be this, and they just adjust it all every time they send
This
one
one's
through.
gonna terrorize a little girl.
This one's gonna really hate children, and this one's gonna not like the giant tall robots, and then they send in. They refers to the waves as the first wave is the hounds, the second one is it's just more and more advanced as they go forward to more complicated thinking, and the kaiju are always basically animals. The reason they don't act like they're all that smart is because technically speaking they're not. They're very big, but they're basically animals. So if you get them into a fight, they're mostly going to attack you with claws and limbs, and they'll bite you and stab you.
Leatherback
And then
did
if they
use weapons. It did try to grab other shit in the area, and it did try to fight
yes,
him using.
but it learned that from watching them do it.
Right.
argue. Well, I mean, there's no way to tell, but you could argue that it learned that during the fight. Also, it doesn't use its EMP right away, even though it's literally been given that ability. They could have used it before they even got to land, frozen the entire Shatter Dome, and then just walked into the city without having to deal with the giant robots at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's they have weapons and they do use them, but they have to be pushed to use them because they're not smart enough to do what a living creature like us or like the precursors would do, which is pick the time we use that ability to maximize its effectiveness.
Now
They
connect
use it
this to the
essentially when they
pregnancy.
get the pregnancy. I see as just they're experimenting. They are treating the kaiju as templates and adjusting them, making them bigger, stronger, more dangerous as they go, and they keep trying out weird shit. They're like, okay, so this one's going to have like an EMP. It's also going to be really thick, so like when you hit it, it's not really going to notice. This other one's going to be thinner, faster. We're also going to give it wings, which we theoretically haven't done before. And then we're going to give it this like prehensile tail that's going to be super strong and covered in a claw. It feels like somebody messing with a bunch of settings to see what will work and what doesn't. And one of the settings was, okay, if it lives long enough, we're going to have it actually give birth to another one, which will double. We only have to send one through, and that one becomes two. And then, like, theoretically, would it then birth another one? And then the one it birthed would in turn continue to birth and was that programmed where they would just spread? And if you left them alone long enough, there would be like 5 of them?
Jesus, I didn't even think of all that. That's actually pretty spot on. Holy shit.
Yeah, you went places. My simple brain was more like this is either one, a nod to Godzilla because there was like the Godzilla babies,
Hmm.
or it's a or this actually was the three kaiju precursor event. Third one being a small one inside of that one.
Yeah. When he did the math for it, he figured the triple event would be 3 large kaiju. He might have been slightly wrong.
Yeah.
But again, that's also all assumptions based off of pattern. And what would answer all of
Yeah.
this is if we actually knew anything about the force that is invading Earth, because that's what it is. It's an invasion. He calls them colonists, and that's a true description. They intend to colonize the Earth. They intend to take it over, kill everything that isn't them, and then just use up the planet and its resources, then move on to the next world. And that is what they're going to do. We don't know their intent. We have to take a lot of guesses, but I liked that it really felt like human tech, which is hard tactile machines, versus an insanely advanced biopunk civilization who can dimension hop and who literally grow everything.
Fucking A, dude.
What? Is
Not
this
this-
not how you took the film?
No, but that's amazing. That is amazing.
I mean, it's one of those things. My brain's been stuck on biopunk as a setting for like the last couple of months. It's been really interesting to me, and I've been thinking a lot about it. And that's exactly how I see the aliens. I mean, when they go through the portal, as soon as they enter it, it gets like really swimmy and weird, and then as you get like halfway through, it literally looks like a giant living creature, like a freaking blood vessel or some sort of inside of another living being.
That's
And
where
then
I
they get
mentioned
all the way
Kaiju
through.
Brown
And
Eye.
I mean, it's essentially so biologically you're not wrong. The word sphincter is how you would describe the thing that they come through
Oh,
that
now
opens.
you're getting all scientific bobbly gook on me.
A doctor would agree, and you're not a doctor.
So, with that being said, because that was a really goddamn good explanation, let's go ahead and continue with this. So, the baby kaiju runs out, and it's actually
Yep.
choking on its own umbilical cord. And
Mhm.
before it manages to die, it does its death knell after it swallowed, like, takes a hold of and swallows Hannibal
Oh.
Chow.
It T-Rex just gobbles him down,
Yeah.
throws him back like a clam at a fucking bar.
So, doing this, Newton and Gottlieb, they end up getting the idea to go ahead and try to drift with that baby's kaiju brain, and they decide we're going to share the neural load together. Which that was a really
sharing
cool
a
moment.
load.
Yes,
It's two dudes sharing a load.
that was obvious, and I'm gonna let you have it.
Listen. I'm not. I'll be real. I also thought about saying something similar. I'd be like, I bet Charlie's used to this. You know.
Dude, yeah, man. Yeah, hey.
Charlie. Uh,
Not
uh,
as used to it as roaches, but
and so then at that point, they're like, okay, we need to go ahead and reset the clock. The one of the pilots in Striker Eureka, when they were shooting, when they were trying to deal with Leatherback, his arm ended up breaking because he ended up, what was it? The arm gets damaged, but then he also ends up like being ejected from his harness, and then he ends up hurting himself even more.
So he detached from the harness
Yeah.
because they were dead in the water, and he was going to detach and go start looking at like the hardware and trying to troubleshoot.
Right.
And his kid realized, wait, don't do that because of how close the monster was, and all it did was slap the head, but it made him fly across the inside and slam into the wall in his shoulder full force. Fun fact, that's why you should never try to open a door by smashing your shoulder into it. I don't care
Yep.
if Hollywood told you to do that. This is my PSA. Do not do that. You will absolutely, possibly irreparably harm your rotator cuff. Do not do that. That is not what it's built for.
Yeah, they've
Kick
learned now,
the
because
door.
if you look at newer movies, they actually just kick down the doors instead of doing that because they know better now.
I don't know why that was a thing. I'm like, no, that is how you horribly, horribly damage yourself. Please
I
don't
mean,
do
if
that.
you look at the opening credits to Reno 911, one of the cops tries doing that, and he cries out in pain after doing that. So, yeah. If anything, learn from Reno 911, kids.
That's right. That's a good wholesome show. We should definitely send children to watch that.
Hey, considering how much cursing we've done in this, I don't think that really matters. So they do their neural load on that one, and in the meantime, two new kaiju show up, and they are both level 5s. So
Or
what we get is, it is two level 4s, but they're circling around the breach. That's right.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
what we have with Striker Eureka, we have to have a new pilot. So we still have, the younger one, Chuck, but he also is going to be co-piloting with Marshall Pentecost. Before he does all that, he gives his great big speech that rivals Independence Day, and the only thing I remember from it is, "Today, we cancel the apocalypse."
Yeah, that's the only good line he says. I feel like most of it I also tuned out. I only remember, and I just got done watching it. The only thing I remember is we canceled the apocalypse. I'm kind of right there with you.
The downside is they overused this in trailers, so the moment was completely gone because they put this in the trailers. The upside is it's a really good trailer moment, and after hearing it a bunch, yeah, it is kind of repetitive, and the last line really is what sells it. My favorite part is when he starts it, he says today, and then you see him stop and almost like chuckle to himself and say it again, as he's like, it's a small character moment that shows that he doesn't have anything prepared. His character is thinking of this on the spot.
Yep.
Like he's just thinking back on everything that's happened, all the things he's experienced, because he was a pilot back when Mark 1s were made. So he was one of the original pilots of these things. He's been there fighting them on the front lines since the beginning. So he's just, all of that is coming forward, and he's like, I'm going to give this one last speech to get everybody going, and this is it. This is our big thing. It either works and we live, or it doesn't and we all die. So
now we also
like that
know
character moment.
that because of his radiation poisoning, at this
his
point
addiction to-
it's determined that if he goes into a Jaeger again, he will die. So with him going into Striker Eureka, at this point it's a suicide run. And we all know suicide runs, guys. I mean, we've played Mass Effect too.
I watched Star Wars. You can live through those.
Haha. Well, we're not getting into that either. When it comes to him getting Striker Eureka, everybody says their goodbyes. They all know that this is going to be the final thing, the final push, and they still are on the plan that they're just going to drop a bomb through the breach, and that should be it.
Yep.
Well,
Break the breach by detonating it in the middle between the 2 points, and that'll destabilize it so that it breaks.
exactly. That's what they thought was going to happen. Wrong. When Gottlieb and Newt, they end up going to the kaiju brain, drifting, all that bullshit. They find out that plan is garbage. They can only go through the breach with kaiju DNA. It basically only opens up when a kaiju is coming in or coming out. So
the breach is controlled by the enemy forces, both ends of it, so they just don't let you in if you're not their forces.
right.
which goes to show like there's a level of like not learning from history that goes on in this as well, because like Newt also says the nuke is going to bounce off and get kicked out like it always has, meaning they've been throwing stuff at the breach for a while now,
Which makes sense.
and which they now just magically think this plan specifically is going to work because, oh, if we put the whole kaiju in instead of just throwing things at the breach outside, like that was going to magically be any more different. It's still a foreign object hitting another effectively foreign object. Just because the foreign object is bigger doesn't mean it's going to work.
Right.
Right. So at first, right, I wasn't, maybe they said it earlier in the movie, or maybe I wasn't paying attention, but the moment Newt says that, he mentions that part, just like the others, a part of me is thinking like, you motherfuckers have been throwing shit. You didn't think that your Jaeger would get kicked out or just bounce off of it either as well?
Yeah.
Like, what makes you think this would
Yeah,
be
that
any
doesn't
different?
actually make any sense. And it strikes you as a little odd that their last-ditch effort is, wait, it's going to fail like the others. Why would you think it wouldn't? That is a little weird. Shout out to the scientists saving the day. But yeah, it is. It
Right?
does show that they've, again, I mean, they've been fighting it for years, so they have to have tried like everything at this point. They've
Oh, yeah.
tried, I'm sure they sent like unmanned submersibles toward the breach. In the beginning, there was so much time between breaches. We had like probably months to just mess with the breach and poke it and prod it and try to like figure out how it works. Is it giving off anything? Is it not? It's obviously hasn't drained the ocean, so there's something preventing stuff from going into the breach, because theoretically 7 years of a hole that big at the bottom of the ocean would have like sucked out a decent chunk of the water on our planet, but it doesn't. It's sealed, so something is sealing it. So it doesn't make any sense that they
And,
wouldn't realize that, but movie.
and to add insult to injury on that aspect is the fact that how can I say this? Effectively, this world has gotten so inundated with kaiju parts. There is a secondhand market to effectively lean into the old stereotype of Chinese medicine make your dick go hard,
Yeah.
right? With the animal products, right? 'Cause that was said pretty much when he goes into Hannibal
Yeah,
Chow's
I wanted to bring
medicine
that up
store.
earlier, but yeah, you're
right?
right.
So there's already a precedence in this world that people are already utilizing kaiju parts for things that aren't kaiju related, right? There's a temple with the head, right? And then that. So part of me is thinking like there wasn't a single person that wasn't like, let's put scales or parts around the bomb and send the bomb in with the scales.
Or like mounted into the
Like,
old
I
head
feel
and
like-
just throw that head at the thing and then see what happens.
Right? Oh, our bombs bounce off, but yet kaiju comes through. We have defeated small kaiju. Put bomb in small kaiju, throw it back through. Would that work? No one tried that in X
So-
amount of, because they were fighting 7 years beforehand. So that means this is like almost over a decade of. In the beginning, they had way more time in their hands because it makes sense that they can do it now, right? Because the incursions are happening quicker and quicker, where it's like basically like what was it like? Basically like every other week is a new incursion.
Eventually, every 4
Right.
hours, multiple kaiju would be
4
jumping
hours,
through
yeah.
the portal, based off of his calculation.
So in the beginning, it was like a month or 3 months in between the next
Yeah,
incursion, right?
every 3 months.
So basically, I give them a leeway after the first year. They're still just in panic mode, right? They're using airplanes to fight. But I have to imagine once you hit like that, once you hit the Mark 1, Mark 2 era of Jaegers, I'm surprised there wasn't a more sophisticated way to start troubleshooting
That's
the
because
breach.
they weren't really trying to be proactive about it. They were just being defensive. One of the things that I I'm not entirely sure on this because they didn't really say at all. They just said Kaiju DNA. Does that mean it has to be alive? Does it need to be dead? Because initially, when they do that fight, showing up, going through the breach, they are taking that one level 5 Kaiju in there, but it's alive at first. It doesn't die until they go through the molten core part, and that's how it dies.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Because if they need a live Kaiju, then even knowing the fact that you need Kaiju DNA, they probably still couldn't do that plan unless it went exactly how it went down in the movie. You know what I mean? So don't get me wrong. Like, if you needed live Kaiju DNA, they would be kind of fucked, because then, even back then, they'd be like, oh, we need live Kaiju DNA. But like I said, we don't know what they did, right? Because once again, we have very
Right,
little
they
time in
would
this
probably
movie.
need to have somebody just patrolling the breach, like, on their scheduled times when they're supposed to be out there. And then as soon as it, comes through, that would be, like, the perfect way to try to fight it and then, make your way to the other side. But, of course, I'm sure they didn't even think of that. So the only two Jaegers left are Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka. Striker Eureka has that giant, megaton payload on its back that they're going to use in order to try and, seal everything. But you've got these two other level 4 Kaijus there, and then as soon as they get closer, a new level 5 shows up. Is the level 5 the hammerhead one?
It's the one with the 3 tails.
Okay.
No.
So it's one of the level 4s that's a hammerhead. That thing is vicious looking. Oh my god.
Looks like a bull.
Yeah, no, that hammerhead is the one that... Yeah, the hammerhead looks like the one that should have died in the first engagement, because it had to get the sword rammed through the head and then got vented with hot, basically earth magma gas, or the fucking, the thermonuclear vent, the thermal vents, basically. Like, I'm just like, yeah, no, that guy should have died, but he lives at first. He's alive.
Yeah,
I'm like, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
No. He doesn't get cut in half. The other one
Right.
gets cut in half. That one lives because it flies towards Eureka
right.
later to try to
And
do a
then it
little
gets
pincer
exploded.
attack. Yeah. So, like, that one was insane. It took a knife in the skull where its brain is, and, like, kind of and got hit with, like incredibly hot gases, and did get a little face melty, and then walked it off.
So speaking of the hammerhead one, just to go back to that, when it realizes that it's in danger, it actually calls the other kaiju that are still alive to Striker Eureka. That way they can try to come in at the same time and try to, knock it out on both sides. That was terrifying to actually think about, because it's like, oh shit, they are really learning at this point. Like, they already did the EMP, they did the pregnancy thing, they did flying. What's next? Oh, let's call for help.
Yep. Give them the ability to work together rather than just individual creatures attacking. Give them the ability to work together. Now,
when they do that, though, it's a very, very sad scene, because that's when Pentecost and Douchebag McGee, they decide that it's going to be their final moment. They decide to destruct the payload, and they inform Gypsy, hey, you're thermonuclear. Just go ahead and drop your body through that breach. It's like, all right, cool. Meanwhile, Gypsy is fucked up. It's already crippled. It only has one arm, and it's, like, limping. When Striker Eureka blows up, it has one of the coolest fucking things that you can ever see. It's parting the Red Sea, basically. And you see all the dead fish on the ground, like, oh shit. And all the water is just gone. It's, like, just blasted away. And Gypsy turns around, and it looks up at the water. It's like, oh fuck! And then just smashes right into it.
Like, a part of me, when I first saw that scene happen, right? Like, my naive part of me would say, okay, especially after Duty Danger gets through the breach and then does the and does the release of the pilots afterwards. A part of me is like, why didn't they send Asshole Kid out? But then a part of me is also like, there's no way he could have gotten away from the shockwave of a nuclear blast anyways. I'm glad they didn't bother to try, even though part of me would have been like, it would have been nice to see him get, attempted. Because, like, granted, he is an asshole, but, like, it also kind of sucks to know that you're basically...
That's my son right there.
Listening to his son's final moments. Yeah.
I just wanted to do that. But no, I agree. But, Will, we're at the tail end. What happens?
Eureka blows up, we get a really cool representation of water rushing in one direction, and then water rushing in another direction.
I don't like that band.
You're a bitch.
How dare you? You're a bad person.
Sorry, go on.
So then they decide to take one of the kaiju corpses and drag it over to the hole. And while they're dragging it over, the really big beefy one that's still not dead shows up, and they're like,
The level 5,
all right,
yeah.
you know what? We can't fight this thing. We are limping and missing an arm. So they just slap the go button and turn on their rocket boosters and then tackle this thing, stab it with the sword, and just bear hug it into the breach. And then
Yeah, they
while it's
do.
wiggling and
Oh
trying
my
to rip
God.
them apart, they vent the heat thing to literally bore a hole through its chest cavity, and then it dies. And they ride its now unconscious corpse right through the breach into the magical, mystical in-between space, and then they just keep falling. And then there's yeah,
Kaiju
essentially,
bunghole.
it is time for the kaiju starfish. And which would not be a
Sorry.
chocolate starfish. We are not children. It would be blueberry. Seriously, all of it was blue.
God damn it, you had to make it gross.
As the man who really has been excited about sphincters this whole time.
Fucking Lucky Charms. Anyways. So then what happens at the end, David?
Effectively,
Yeah.
now this is where it gets interesting. I don't. Number two, you guys can answer this question or not. Did they attack what would be looked at as the leader? Because they really do focus on one guy, one kaiju guy, who is notably smaller than anything we've seen from this race of
The
colonizers,
precursors,
essentially.
yeah.
Precursors, and he definitely has a bit more of a refined
So-
look to compared to everything else, right? Like
So
he
that
looks like
one
he would almost be like
is
an envoy,
one of, you know how
in
the
a way.
kaiju all look like kaiju? That thing that they show that actually looks at Gypsy is the precursor, the people building the kaiju. That's what they are. So that's what they really look like. Those are essentially the aliens from like the movie Independence Day when they're outside of their biosuit things. That's what that is. That's the actual alien.
Yeah.
It has like 4 eyes, 4 dots, or whatever.
I think I thought it was
I don't
6, if I
remember. It
remember
had
right.
more than 2, and rather than eyes, they look like points of light. But
yeah.
that's what the aliens look like. They
Yeah.
are kind of bipedal with like long arms, and I'm guessing they'd be like 10 to 12 feet tall. It's really hard to tell size because everything is all weird in that realm. So, but they're not like anywhere near as big as the kaiju. They're not as big as Gypsy. So just like we built giant robot to fight giant monster, they build giant monster to do their bidding. So they build giant living creatures to do what they need to do. Those creatures are dwarf them in actual size. So
So David,
Mhm.
what? I guess my question for you is, how did Mako? How was she able to get back through the breach?
Yes, she was sent back with this lovely technology called
damn right.
an eject button. Something that was not afforded to asshole kid. But then, like I said, I jokingly said he would have survived a nuclear blast anyways. But still, she was sent back. By the way, I do love how. See, this is where we can get nitpicky, right? But how nitpicky you want to get.
I have a feeling
the
I know where you're going, but go on.
With the criticism of this plan shouldn't have worked anyways, to where you needed DNA to leave to get in, but yet you don't need DNA to get out.
Okay, my one thought on this is that because they opened the breach using that kaiju corpse. Actually, no, 2 thoughts. Either the kaiju corpse is still in there, therefore the breach is still
Because
open
it's sitting
until
halfway.
it's
The corpse
blown
is
up.
just floating in the tube. It hasn't actually gone
Right.
in either direction.
Or because they still opened it up and they haven't closed it on the precursor side, that it's just remaining open. So it's just a tunnel at that point until they're able to go ahead and blow it up. That's my only thought on that.
I could accept that. Don't get me wrong. Like, I in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't actually bother me. I just think it's kind of funny to be like the thought of, okay, so like for me, it's like I would still do the ejection anyways because it's better to try than just get nuked point blank range. Like still try. But a part of me would be like, man, this shit ain't gonna fucking work.
Man,
Like, because remember the analogy that was used. It's like going to a grocery store and scanning the barcode,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And when
that's the best way to do it.
when you scan it once, it's not like granted, yes, the beam that checked the barcode is on indefinitely, but it's not like it made it sound like it was like a one-time use, like a ticket punch, essentially, right? You know, and then go. So clearly, yeah, like if you want to go with what we just said here, with where it's like once you're there, as long as there's DNA in the tunnel stays open, then that does make sense. But considering the fact of how little information any of them know, the other ending of this could have been, I really wish I got to know you, but this is where our life ends, but I'm glad you were, you know what I mean? The very sappy ending, and they both just kind of die and move on, which I kind of thought they were going to do when I was watching this movie, because the only thing I know about Pacific Rim 2 is the main character dude isn't there. I didn't even know Mako wasn't there. Because I just know, so I knew the main character wasn't there. I didn't know Mako was there, but I do know the father is there, right? That's all I know. Yeah, I think the father's there. This guy looks like the father's there. So I was like, oh, like maybe the whole cast just gets fucking taken out, right? No. Gypsy Danger Crew makes it out with, this is where we get back to our previous conversation of Mako's unconscious, has no air, gets sent out, and then the cartoonish, basically leg grinding hole that makes up Gypsy Danger, you have to walk over to release the nuclear bomb with inside of itself, or at least make yourself go nuclear, I should say. So yeah, no, he sets it off, and it felt like the precursor kind of understood what was happening. He understood that he was getting bombed.
We're getting
he was like,
fucked.
Because Gypsy Danger starts lighting up a bit, and you see his eyes do the kind of joke where it looks like it gets a little bit bigger, like, oh no.
Although I will say, Gypsy, when it decides to set itself up, where it starts floating, and you could see all the different things that actually make it float in that particular space. I'm like, all right, this is kind of an iconic look here. It's like, it's almost religious in a way, but it's also really cool looking to think, oh man, this is how everyone's gonna die. All right.
Honestly, I think it just T-posed for dominance, because I've learned that. That's what you do.
T-pose with what's that or that command in any kind of Steam game where you can no clip.
Yep.
T-pose with no clip.
Just gotta T-pose in your haters, you know.
Yeah. And then in the final moment, as you mentioned, Mako, she's ejected and she goes up. Raleigh, he gets ejected at the literal last 10 seconds. And the Precursors area gets blown up with that giant nuclear blast. Gypsy Danger is no more. And Mako comes up and she's in her pod. And I like the way that they do this. I don't know if they do this in like any actual real life situation, but when her pod comes up and it's in the water, it starts putting out this green dye that basically shows, hey, this is where we are. If anybody needs to come and find us, we're here. And I was like, oh, that's actually really cool. And then Raleigh shows up and he's not breathing and she starts freaking out. Everybody else starts freaking out. They think he has no pulse. So she hugs him really tight and he goes, hey, Mako, you're squeezing me too tight. I can't breathe. And then they get rescued, or helicopters on the way, and then they put their heads together and they do
Which is
not
funny,
kiss.
because they were setting them up to be a couple.
Right.
Well, he literally
coded to be
says,
that way.
my timing is shit before they launch on the final mission, because he said, I haven't thought about the future at all for 5 years until now. And she just kind of looks at him, and then he goes, yeah, my timing sucks. And then they cut away from it, and I'm like, yep.
Yep.
I kind of like, it is just because he's not in the next movie. I kind of like that because it leans a little bit more into the holy shit, I really do have bad timing, because that would have been the moment you did it in the movie in any other piece of media, but in here, and she clearly was checking him out. We've had two different scenes in which Mako clearly has like leanings towards him, right? She was staring at him up and down. We had his shirt off that one time in which he closed the door on her because once again he has bad timing, can't take a hand. And then when he confronts her about wanting to know why Marshall won't let her become a pilot, she's trying to get away from it, like, oh, that's my room, by the way.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
and it sends her on her way because she's trying to escape into his
then
bedroom.
She's a
so
little
clearly,
peeping Tom right after that. Yeah.
No, before that, it was Peeping Tom first, and then that room scene was
That's
after.
right. Yeah.
So clearly she has her eyes on the prize, but Homeboy is fumbling.
he
So-
what is it? He's got the Batman mentality. I'm so steeped in my trauma. I can't deal with this right now.
I mean, I'll give credit to DC writers. I don't know if it's currently like that now, but there was a period of time in which Batman married
Yeah.
Selena Kyle.
Yeah, but
Well,
that's been retconned.
Well, yeah, of
already.
course. That's just there
Already?
because they knew they could sell comics with it.
Oh man,
It's pure fan service, and then they're like, okay, we did it, and then they threw it away. Because,
Yep.
I like the carnival scene where Batman had to dress up as Superman.
Oh,
and
yeah,
Superman
that
had to
was
dress up as
funny.
Batman for Halloween to go on a carnival. That was funny. I like that. But anyways, no.
So, all right, sorry about that, folks. I had a technical issue on my end. Audacity just crashed on me, which is the first time that's ever happened. But at this point, I think we're pretty much done with everything that we need to say about this movie. Any final thoughts before we're done?
However many there are, or
5
there
to
will be
10.
in the future. If someone is hitting on you, do not fumble the bag like our main character here did in the end, because you will get replaced. That is my advice.
Final thoughts? Honestly, it still hits as a really good movie. This thing is over like a decade old at this point. I would still consider this to be one of the best monster movies made. It does everything really well. It's got great characters, great action. It's still really pretty and fun. Soundtrack still hits really well. I recommend it highly to anybody who likes monster movies, robots, that sort of stuff. It's just a fun sci-fi romp. So.
Absolutely. So, David, before we go and before we hang up here, I just want to let you know the next movie. It's got interesting cast in it. It's got Scott Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's kid, Mako from this movie, Rinko Kikuchi, and John Boyega.
No,
And
He's the main
Day.
shit. Really?
Yeah.
Does he also complain about Disney Plus?
No, he
that
actually
movie?
acts a lot more like himself.
Yeah.
That's
But
good.
I just wanted to leave you with that before you end up actually watching it.
I mean, I like him as a. What's funny?
Oh, so do I.
I actually like him. Cause he and I watched a few interviews with him. He and I kind of see eye to eye on how he views Star Wars and Disney and how they treat it. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're big right. So I might give it a watch a little bit sooner than I would have, just because John Boyega's in there.
Good.
Because of that
I'm
now.
glad to
actually,
hear
funny
that.
enough,
Hopefully
so.
you actually enjoy this movie and you don't join the masses saying you hate it. But I fully love that movie too. Not as much as I love this one, but I still I just watched it on the same day that I ended up watching the first movie, and man, it still holds up for me. I love it. But that wraps it up for this 2.5-hour special of Pacific Rim. I think we officially beat the runtime on this. So if anything, thank you all for tuning in, and remember, you've been listening to Big Mecha, but not huge. Have a good night.
And everybody.
Night.